to Magic in the Noise. We're very glad to have you here today. We have a panel of guests, we have presenters, there's all kinds of things going on. We've just had about half an hour of technical difficulties, but that should be all sorted out now. And so we'll go around, we'll say hello to everyone, and give everyone a chance to introduce themselves, and then I'm going to start my presentation. So David, do you want to start by introducing yourself?
Yeah, hi, I'm David. I'm the other half of Mint, and I'm a remote viewer of many, many years. And I will be giving one of the presentations. And I will pass it on to you, Patrick.
Hi, I'm Patrick. I'm from the Netherlands. Since a couple of years busy with remote view training and interested in all derivative subjects. So.
I'm Claudia, also living in the Netherlands, and I'm doing remote viewing now for around 3 years. I love it. I learned recently the latest and new way of learning remote viewing by Sasha, her own full spectrum illumination, and it's really awesome to do this. So I'll give it to Michael.
Thanks, Claudia. So my name is Michael. I've been remote viewing for about 8 months now, mostly just kind of free-form viewing with some feedback by the community that's kind of grown up around this. And Sasha, though, thanks for having me here.
Hey everyone, I'm Chris. I'm also known as Chili Online. That's my nickname. I've been remote viewing for around 4 years. I started somewhere in 2020, 2021. I kind of surfed along multiple methodologies, so I've seen a lot of them, and I've been formally trained in a lot of them. Eventually, I also trained with Sasha with her methodology, and that's what I'm using at the moment. And I really love it. So I really enjoyed the training. So just to say, if you're interested, I would definitely advise to go, because it's a really good training, and it's a personal one-on-one coaching that I got, and it was really good. Tonight I will be speaking a bit about my website. So on my website, you will see later, but I developed some tools for training and playing around with remote viewing. And the idea is to introduce those to you, and also to maybe spark a bit of creativity for the people who will be watching this. And you will be able to send me your requests. And if you have simple ideas that I can develop quickly, I will do them, and I'll put them on the website. It's all for free, so it's really for the community, and it's for fun.
Nice, thank you everyone. And yes, I am delighted to have 2 of my students here who did really, really well, and their work is always fun and surprising to see. And you can see their work, and also Michael and Patrick's work, on our monthly live streams that we hold, where we put out a public target and we invite usually 6 to 10 people to come in on the live stream to discuss their hits. And the next one is, I think, Saturday, December 21st. So that's coming up as well. So we have a few presenters. So we're going to have John Herlosky is going to be joining us to present, and we're going to have a conversation with him. And Michael Strange from Troubled Minds is also going to be coming in to present. And like Chilio Chris said, we'll be seeing his website. We were going to have Hilde Latour and Patrick Andekirk. We're going to kind of co-present about the rice experiment, Dr. Emoto's rice experiment. But unfortunately, the technical problems were insurmountable. And so we'll have to reschedule that for another day. And to start things off, David and I are going to do our own little presentations. And I'm going to start with mine now. Let me see. I'll just grab my screen. And for the people in chat, welcome, hello, we're glad to see you here. Please do leave your comments, because we will be taking questions from chat as well. In between every presentation, we'll do a few minutes of Q&A, a little bit of conversation, and then at the end of all the presentations, then we can have a bit of a more in-depth conversation about any of the topics that came up that people want to talk about. And so I'm going to start. So here's just a little bit about us. Actually, I'm going to Yeah, so change my setup here. So for those who don't know me, I am Sasha. I'm an advanced remote viewer. I'm trained in multiple remote viewing methodologies. And along with David here, we're co-founders of Magic in the Noise. So Magic in the Noise is a remote viewing think tank. We're trying to do remote viewing, yes, but also we're conducting research. We are trying to push the boundaries of what's possible with remote viewing. We do our own experiments. We are not just looking at remote viewing, we're also looking at remote influencing. We have incorporated our findings into my full spectrum illumination remote viewing system. And also I've incorporated a lot into my remote viewing data analysis system. And that's what I'm going to be talking to you about today. After having the privilege of working with David, who is a gifted remote viewer, and also the excellent remote viewers who participate in our monthly public remote viewing streams, some of them here, some of them in chat, I have really come to very deeply understand how crucial proper analysis is. And I've developed my method of analysis that allows for complex and new information to be gathered from good remote viewing sessions. And again, a large factor in that success is having had access to really good sessions, to really good data, and so that makes the difference. So that's why I want to talk to everyone today about the importance of remote viewing data analysis for great remote viewing. Analysis really unlocks the meaning in remote viewing data, and I really do believe that without it, remote viewers are throwing away half of the meaning that the data stream is trying to offer them. So my method is called full spectrum analysis. And like I said, it is what we use here at Mint to analyze our work, to analyze the work of the participants in our monthly live streams. We work with the data stream. We work with its patterns and its complexities, with the synchronicities that occur when you're on the right path. And Michael Strange will be talking to us, I think, a little bit about synchronicities a little later. So that's relevant, I do think. Remote viewing data is encoded for whatever its own true purposes might be, but then it gets translated for interaction with our human sensory apparatus. And in order for that to happen, it has to pass through our very many filters, our distortions, our biases, our expectations, our own memories, in order to make its way to the remote viewer's page. And so here's a little video clip. Sorry, I just thought it shows a little bit about why RV data analysis is needed, and it amuses me, so I hope it'll amuse you too. But only if I can get it to work. I practiced this yesterday with David, and I can't remember what it is that I had to do to get the video to work. Do you remember, David?
No, it was magic on your back end. You did something. You twiddled something over there, and
Always
but I did witness her do it. She actually tested it. It did work. I had to be able to see your like play button, and right now I don't see it.
Laser pointer, wasn't it?
Yeah, you
Okay,
did
so
you did the laser pointer with the cat thing, and then you went you clicked on like the frame or the edge or something. The little toolbar showed up with the play button, and when I could see that, then it worked because you just hit the play button.
okay, so I'm going to try to do it this way. And David, oh, you might have to let me know if it works. It looks like that's not going to want to work.
No.
Well, that's unfortunate. So let me see if I can. I might have to do it in the other screen. Yep. And while we take this little break, David, can you check to make sure that we're streaming on YouTube? Thank you. Oh, there we go. Oh. I do apologize. Yeah, okay, I know what I had to do. I had to change my... Let's try that again.
I just said, yeah, there you go. Go ahead.
Did it?
No. No. No.
So now let's look at what happens when we have analysis on top of that kind of a situation of the data stream trying to offer us data.
No. No.
So now we kind of see what it is that's going on for the remote viewers.
Sasha, can you kind of verbalize the video? We saw it, but just in case it was a little distorted.
Yes, I'll talk about it here. Hold on. I will just grab my presentation view. So the point of the video really is that the remote viewing data is encoded, and the remote viewer isn't really sure what they're seeing, and they make assumptions about what's familiar to them. And with analysis, you get to see more clearly what the data stream is offering. So the analysis of the remote viewing data helps us to look past the dog, past the remote viewer's common lexicon of familiarity in order to find the bear that's at the heart of the target. So this is a little bit about why RV data needs to be translated. If someone is speaking sign language to you, but you only understand English, what is it that you do? How do you get a translation? How do you decode what they're trying to communicate to you? When we start to communicate with young infants, they're born not even knowing our language. We say a word and then we point to an example of it to try to convey the meaning of the word. This is very similar to what the data stream is doing in our remote viewing sessions. It shows us an image and then it tries to give us a sense of what this means. In the early days of language acquisition, children make a lot of common errors like overextending a word or a category to things that don't have the same meaning. So a bear is called a dog because it shares some attributes. And with remote viewers, we see that a lot of the same types of errors are made. They're interfacing with the data stream. The data is encoded for the data stream's own purposes that we're blind to, and it's encoded in its own language, and we're making a lot of these same mistakes that children do when learning our language. So basically, this is all resting on the premise that this data is being translated from the data stream. And my experiences have taught me that the data we access exists in a kind of data stream. It's not encoded in English. It's not encoded in the narrow range of light spectrum that lets our eyes see. But the data is encoded for some purpose, and it is translated for interaction with our human senses. So having said that, any experienced remote viewer is also familiar with the sense of the data filtering through our memories, our experiences, our notions, and very often it matches to something in our mind that's just close enough. It's close enough to whatever it is that the data is trying to communicate to us. So it can be a movie scene that we barely remember. It can be a visit to a museum when we were 7. The data will find something in our experiences that has some relevance. But whether that has to do with meaning or appearance, I think that's often where the confusion is introduced. And I'm just going to, we have John, who's just come in. So John, I've just added you to the live stream, and I'm just going to mute you for now. And so you can let us know in the chat if you have any questions or concerns. And so this translation of data stream data to both meaning and form that is somehow sensible to humans, I just wanted to explore a little bit about what's happening, why it's happening, and how we can leverage that understanding to get better remote viewing results. because although the data is not encoded with us in mind as the audience for it or as end users, we still are able to get both form, the physical representation of a target, and the meaning of the target. We're able to see these patterns and meaning that the data stream prioritizes. And it does seem to prioritize those more than the physical representation of the target. But people do differ in whether their own primary perceptual filter is based on meaning or form, and you can learn to do both. I'm a conceptual viewer, so the meaning comes through for me. I'm not a very visual remote viewer. However, you can see here in this session where I drew the target, which was the Voynich manuscript, the book on the dais, that I'm still able to get accurate visual information. So here we see David, who has immense artistic skill. And again, he's describing the physical aspects of the target very clearly and concisely. But again, these are skills that anyone can acquire. If you're more of a conceptual viewer, you can learn to see and record the physical descriptions of the target. So I understand the job of the analyst as finding the meaning of bear in the sketch of a dog. A good analyst looks for both form and meaning. And in order to be able to do that well and effectively, they need to get to know their viewers. They need to recognize the patterns, the patterns and the symbols, and most importantly, the lexicon of the subconscious of their viewers. So here are just a few examples of data that we have here, data that came through in one of David's sessions as dog tags, and analysis revealed them to be data related to an Egyptian cartouche. So here we can see that both the form came through. The dog tag, you can see that it actually looks like a cartouche. There's some similarity there. You can see the parallel. But you can also understand the meaning that is the parallel. So we're talking about identification, name, and rank. This is something that is used to identify someone so that they can be remembered after death. So both the meaning and the form are important. Here's an example of a Freemason dove symbol that was only discovered because of full spectrum analysis. Otherwise, it would just have been, why is there a bird in the middle of this session? So these analysis actually can make a really big difference in gathering data for targets that are more complex, more sophisticated than something like this, where it's really what you see is what you get. Here's just another example of form and meaning coming through from the data stream, and then analysis helping to make sense of it. So here's the form, the pyramid, the broken stones. This is coming through, but there's also the meaning. The age of the pyramid, the ice age that occurred in between us now and when it was constructed. And so this is something I see in a lot of remote viewing sessions, something about quantum stuff. It's something quantum related. And people who aren't familiar with the deeper data and they don't trust the analyst to decode their metaphors, they're likely to write something like that, something quantum related, rather than exploring the data and trusting that the analysis will make sense of whatever strange impressions that they're receiving. So a viewer who can allow for metaphor in their work because they trust their analyst's ability can describe things very accurately that they aren't familiar with, that are beyond their lexicon, outside of their knowledge base or their education. And an example of this would be in David's session on sonoluminescence that I tasked him with. He was describing polarized magnetic field lines. And in his session, he's not familiar with polarized magnetic field lines and that that's even possible, but he's picking up on the data and he's trusting that I will analyze this and make some meaning of it. And so he's writing down the data that comes through. And then from that, we were able to do a proper analysis and we were able to decode it and unlock the deeper meaning. And so that's the importance of having an analyst and trusting your analyst to decode whatever data the data stream offers. Here's an example from one of my sessions about, I had data coming through about a spark of energy that's coming in at conception, and it's imbuing some kind of a special energy into a life form. This is really woo-woo out there data. It's weird, but I put it down because that's what the data stream is offering me. And so the viewer doesn't have to understand the data while they're in the middle of a session. They shouldn't be trying to analyze the data coming through to figure out, does this make sense? What does this mean? How would that work? How can you have, energy imbued at the spark of conception? That's a bit weird. But you trust and you write it down. And then analysis comes through and shows that, oh, actually scientists just captured the flash of light, the sparks, when a sperm meets an egg. And so that's why having an analyst and trusting in that process can really unlock deeper meaning. And so it should be done as a separate step, and ideally by another person, because the remote viewer will insist that they saw a dog. It was a dog. Whereas the analyst has that separation, that objectivity to say, I know you saw a dog, but I'm looking at the data and I can tell that the data stream is trying to communicate the idea of a bear. So here, I wanted to show you some of the group work from our monthly live streams, including some of the people that are in the panel here today. So sometimes the data is very, very clear and it's form-based. So we're seeing a physical representation that you can look at it and you can see that matches the target. It comes in the shape, the form. It's a one-to-one relationship. And group work is excellent to show that high coherence can help to verify the exact shape of a target. Here you can see something else happening. Sometimes the patterns are still pointing to something, but they're pointing to something more obscure, but just as significant, and often more significant. So proper analysis goes beyond calling these flowers that came up in this session about the spherosh noise. It's about going in, tracing the history of the text to find those meaningful links. And when you do proper analysis, all of a sudden, all this data that would normally, I think, in the community be considered noise becomes meaning. It becomes the signal. And so we can look at group data. We can see the coherence. We can see how meaning is expressed. And by having group data, you can see how differently the underlying meaning is expressed through different people. And they're all describing the same thing, but they're describing it through the lens of their own personality, their own skills, their own interests, and their own distortions. And so as an analyst, by seeing this, you start to learn what it is what are the symbolic overlays? What do symbols mean for particular viewers? And that really helps to unlock data a lot more easily as well and more thoroughly. Here's one example, again, from our group live stream where some remote viewers would see a peacock in a session about divine light. And some people consider that noise when they're going through their own session. Oh, this was about divine light, and I have this weird bird here. It's a peacock. That's probably noise. But when you do proper analysis, you show actually the peacock is a symbol of reincarnation, rebirth, and renewal, and that's relevant to this target. And then you can map that onto other people's data. So here we had other data talking about something being passed down from generation to generation. And so again, that's just to highlight the importance of analysis. So analysis is not just about understanding your own biases, your movie scene memories, to be able to map a one-to-one relationship between the session data and an aspect or an element of a target. It's not about saying I saw a horse and there was a horse at the target. It's also about uncovering the deeper meaning that is transcending the limited knowledge base that constrains the viewer. The viewer might not know enough about polarized magnetic fields to be able to describe their understanding of it, but they can describe what they see. They can describe the meaning that's coming through, and whether it comes through in metaphors and similes or just as direct data, that's where you do need the analysis to make more sense of that. And so as viewers with good analysis, the longer you work with viewers, the longer you do analysis, the data just becomes richer and more profound. And it does seem to me, having the experiences that I've had, that the data stream seems to recognize that deeper analysis is going to be done on these sessions. So it starts offering these multiple layers of meaning because it knows we're going to look for them and find them. And here's just some examples. In the bottom half of the slide, you can see examples from my own work where the analysis did uncover some really startling and amazing information and new information, things that aren't common knowledge. And that's, I think, one of the purposes for remote viewing is to be able to identify information that's new. So one of the things I just wanted to point out about good versus bad remote viewing, it's a lot like good versus bad poetry. Bad poetry uses cliches. So it's really limited to triggering the same worn out slogans and meaning in your mind. You hear the first half of the slogan, you know how that phrase will end because you've heard that slogan so many times, and that's bad poetry. Good poetry makes you feel something new. It makes you envision something unfamiliar, and it lets you find beauty there. And I think that's what good remote viewing does as well. That's my perspective. And so I really do think this is important. I think it needs to be talked about a lot more because so much data is being lost. And I think because the remote viewing community isn't always placing as much emphasis on analysis as it should, because most viewers do their own analysis and they're just convinced that they saw a dog. And that's not ideal, even though we think that we're most familiar with what we saw in our session. So we know our symbols and we should be the ones to do our own analysis. I find that that's just not the case, because the problem with that is that as a viewer, you're stuck in the language and knowledge constraints of your own familiarity. And that hinders your ability to just see surprising, unexpected meaning through the data stream. And also, sometimes the analyst has knowledge that you don't have that they can bring to bear to interpret the meaning that's coming through in your session. Again, here you have the viewer who's going to insist that they saw a dog. And that concept of being stopped from doing something fun. I wanted to pet the dog. Something was holding me back. There was controllers who were controlling my destiny. And then the analyst comes in and says, it was a bear, I think. And it looks like those constraints, that feeling that you were having, had more to do with protection. And so the analyst can be more unbiased, and they can look at your data. They can see the restraint as protection. They can see your desire to pet the dog as reckless, as dangerous, as uninformed. And that's what you need to make the most sense of the data that comes through. And again, I do see in the data, in David's work, in my work, in the monthly live stream group where the regular participants work, the data stream does seem to know that I'm going to be doing analysis. And I feel like sometimes it will give me little cues like, oh, you maybe know about this. The viewer might not be familiar with this, but this is something that you maybe have read about. So here's a little hint to go down that route to find more information. I think everybody wants to be the psychic who gets the fame and the fortune, and not a lot of people want to be the copy editor that's working for 2 cents on the best day. And so analysis has been really terribly overlooked. The importance that it has, the value that it has largely been ignored, because people get into remote viewing and they want to be a remote viewer. They don't get into it to analyze other people's work. But analysis really will allow someone to step in, hopefully as a well-trained interpreter, and they help the translation from the data stream. And they help move that data from those sparkles of light that you see when you're in that mode through the mind, through the personality of the viewer, to a document that lays out the profound meaning that the data stream is trying to communicate to the world. And it's trying to do that through a limited set of instruments. That's us, the remote viewers. And so I think anything we can do to help it, to help clarify the data comes through is really important. And yeah. Here's what I think is very funny. The better you are at understanding the data stream, the better you are as a remote viewer. And that feels very rewarding. So then you just want a remote view. But it also makes you a better analyst. The more you can tap into your relationship with the data stream, the stronger your analysis can be. I think there's often a tendency in teams of viewers that are trying to crack the lottery or work on important projects to give the job of analyst to the person with the least amount of psi ability. Okay, you're the worst remote viewer in the group, so you're going to do analysis. And I think that's the opposite of what groups should be doing. I think you want your best remote viewer to be working as the analyst, because they have the strongest link to the data stream, and the data stream works through you as you do analysis. It sets up the synchronicities that allows you to decode the meaning in really delightful ways. And so I just think that's something that people should think about. And I think getting training in how to do analysis, I'm offering training in how to do analysis in the new year, because I think it's something that does need training. It's not just, you look at the dog and, oh, it's a bear. Oh, they're both brown. They're both animals, close enough. It's really about trying to find the deeper layers of meaning that's there. Let's try to play this little video to amuse you and to kind of bring home the point. I'm hoping that people will remember what I'm showing here today. That's really important to me. So this is just an example with nice Christmas music of how our biases, our expectations, our prior experiences, these are shaping what we see. These are shaping the data. And it's creating boundaries around our psychic abilities. And that's why having someone come in as an analyst, so that there are two of you, there's a broader set of knowledge, there are different biases, different expectations. And so having those differences allows more to be revealed in the in-between spaces. And so I think looking at these optical illusions, I do think it's useful to think about this when you're remote viewing and when you're doing analysis. What am I seeing? What am I understanding versus what's actually there, if that makes sense. And then that kind of brings us to the end of what I have. So thank you for your attention. I hope that's been interesting. I hope the little entertaining videos helped make it not just my voice droning on and on. And so I'm going to take questions now if anyone has any.
Yeah, a couple questions. Do you have any sense as to sort of the how many people fall into like the visual, conceptual, simile, metaphor kind of camps? Like across, when you look at the spectrum of viewers across the community, when you've looked at their work, are they tend to be stronger in one area versus another, or is it harder to see that delineation?
So what I've noticed is that the longer someone's been in the remote viewing community, the more that they're a visual viewer rather than a conceptual viewer, because visual viewers is what gets the seal claps, is what gets the attention, the applause. People will, draw the outline of a seal with a ball on its nose. The target is a seal in the water. Everybody claps, and the remote viewer is delighted and feels rewarded. And so I can see the longer people have been in it, the more they've been doing work, even in terms of sharing their work publicly, the stronger the focus is on the visual and the less the focus is on the meaning and conceptual. And I think that's a shame. And I think that shows why we need to start having these conversations, because you're losing the multi-layers. You're losing, I would say, more than 50%. And then you have people who are naturally, maybe because they have aphantasia, and so they are conceptual viewers. So Chris is an example of a conceptual viewer. I'm a conceptual viewer. And for us, I think it's easier for us to focus more on the meaning because that's how information comes through. But I think it's also, there's this pressure to change, to say, we don't care about the meaning because that's not easily noticeable. Just show me the seal so we can do seal claps at your data. And so I think that there's pressure to change how you present your data in order to get the physical descriptions only, because the rest of the data gets ignored. So you think, why did I spend an hour collecting all this data? And the only thing anyone cares about is the picture of the book on page 3, right? And so I think that's why we need to acknowledge that conceptual meaning, multiple layers of interpretation are valid, and that they're pointing to information that we should be focusing on. And then, Michael, who's here in chat or here in the live stream, you're a really good example of someone who, you're freeform, you haven't had a lot of rigid training in any RV methodology. And what I find in your work is that very, very visual. You have your little sketches, but there's often really deep meaning in your sketches. And so that's something I think you've been able to preserve because you haven't gone through traditional training. It hasn't been beaten out of you yet, right? And so that's something that I see. even in the progress over the last year of live streams, I see in everyone's work, because I'm putting a lot of emphasis on the meaning, I'm seeing a lot of that flourish. I'm seeing a lot of that really blossom in people's sessions, that there's more and more meaning coming through. So yeah. So however you are as a remote viewer, you can expand, you can acquire more skills, not just trade one for the other. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks
Does
for
anyone
sharing that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I just kind of I really likes the point about how some information, like if there's if a group of people working together, you have the analysts working with the viewers, and that sometimes the data stream gets conditioned to speak more to the analysts than to like the viewers themselves. And just kind of wondering, you think there's like some ways, like you said, with the steel claps, like some types of like feedback loops between viewers and analysts can kind of get like groups into like blind corners, perhaps, where they're kind of like maybe hamstringing their ability to do analysis or pull data because of certain assumptions they're making?
I don't think so, because I think the data stream offers multiple layers of meaning. So it will offer you the one-to-one match data, the seal clap data. It will offer you the metaphors and symbols that make sense to the viewer. It will also then embed underneath those the metaphors and symbols that make sense to the analyst. And then as well, the coherence with the group data when you work with other people. And so I think that it all kind of happens in this synchronicity magical way. And you can see it progress. Excuse me. But I do sometimes wonder, and this is something maybe we should look at in the new year. When you're doing sessions for other taskers where they're not going to do the kind of analysis that I do, or you're not working, excuse me, with the group, the regular participants, is your data coming through differently? Are you getting different kind of symbols? Are you getting less meaning, more physical descriptors of the actual target? I think that would be really interesting to see. And so maybe this summer, so we could try to really explore that over the next 6 months. And maybe in the summer, we can have a live stream where we compare work done for me in the way that I do my analysis and work done for other taskers. And I think that would be fascinating. Yeah. Any other questions before David begins? No.
Just a comment. It also shows the importance of working in a group, because as you've said, the analyst can do the analysis of the overall session. But when you work in a group, you also get to know your viewers, and sessions after sessions, you find patterns that they reproduce. So you can get more meaningful data if you actually know the viewer and you've already made analysis for that viewer. At least that's my understanding.
Yes, that's correct. So Claudia here often will see targets as underwater if it has to do with etheric energy or anomalous energy. And it's something we've talked about. And so now if she gives me a session and it's underwater, I can see, oh, she's probably picking up on anomalous energy. And it's nice because we have that familiarity. And for Claudia as well to know, okay, I'm getting the sense that this is underwater. It's something we've discussed. It's something we've seen in the group. Now I can probe for, okay, is it really underwater, or is this talking about some kind of ether field, right? And so, yeah, I think that those are the strengths of working with a group, definitely. Yeah.
It also brings a bit of complexity when you start to analyze it for yourself. Because, for example, for me, I've had a few sessions that were related to brain. One of them was the brain implant from Neuralink, and other sessions. And it seems like every time there's brain involved, I get like symbols of butterflies.
Yeah.
So now if I get a symbol of a butterfly, it's kind of a AOL 2.0, I'm like, oh, this has to do with brain, and does it? And so it's a bit difficult to get rid of it. But yeah, the fact to realize that you have kind of symbology that comes back and back again is good, but it brings that new level of problem, let's say.
Yeah, you have to probe it. I've had the dove come through now in a few sessions that in some way relate to reincarnation, even if it's in a surprising way. And now I recognize it. So that's what I have to do. I have to probe, okay, is this the metaphor dove? Is this the reincarnation dove? Or is there actually a pigeon at the target? And so, but I think, yeah, again, as an analyst, I see your work, I know your work, so I see those patterns, and it does let me do more with it. Um, John Dixon, for example, he gets words in different languages, Latin or Greek, and so now I know that if he has something scribbled on the side of a sketch, I'll run it through a translation program and I'll test some specific languages that he maybe more commonly uses, or languages that are related to the target. And I find that, yeah, I'm decoding a lot more data by doing that. So, yeah. David, did you want to present next?
Yes.
Perfect.
Let me try to transition. Let's see.
You know, we always think when you see someone else screen sharing, you're like, why are they struggling? It's so easy. You just click. But then when it's your turn to screen share, you realize, oh, there's all these other things going on. So.
Okay, can you see that? Yes or no?
Yes, we can.
Okay, wonderful. All right, so I hope everyone is enjoying this mini conference. This was Sasha's idea. I think it's a great thing to do. It's a nice thing to do. She wanted to do it for the holidays. I thought that was kind of a nice thing. So hopefully this information from the speakers resonates with you and you enjoy their conversations and information. And consider, of course, liking and subscribing to this channel, and maybe give a shout out or a thanks to the presenter if you appreciated their information. So my particular topic is to discuss direct visual perception in remote viewing. And so anytime I'm talking about visuals, I'm talking about the actual application of seeing some piece of information directly, just like you would see in real life. Now, there are levels to quality of what that looks like, and I'm going to discuss that. But I just want you to understand when I say visual, I'm always saying you're literally seeing the target, because in many instances with remote viewing protocols, training, this is not something that's talked about, stressed, really deeply kind of communicated to people. So, and this particular topic is for the beginner. So this is focused on what would a beginner who can see information visually directly, how would it come through? And this is what this is going to talk about. So when we look at the scientific community in terms of inducing visuals within the minds of subjects, they use typically two approaches, and you can find a bunch of papers published on this information, but they use either a Ganzfeld approach, which is the absence of visual stimulation, or a Ganz-Flicker approach, which is more like overwhelming your visual senses. So one's kind of overwhelming it visually, the other one is the absence of visual. So with the Ganzfeld, typically you could be in a completely pitch black room as an example, but typically people will just close their eyes or they'll use a blindfold, something of that nature, to essentially stop any kind of input into the eyes. For Ganz-Flicker, it's typically done open-eyed because you actually want to see the light. The light flickers, and this creates kind of this overstimulation. You typically wear like frosted glasses or ping pong balls. In the old days, in the 60s, they would wear ping pong balls, and you're being hit by like different colored lights essentially to create the effect, and the light comes through the kind of frosted lenses, so you can't actually see anything that you can make out, because that would be a distraction visually, but you get hit by the light. So these are the two approaches that are used to induce by the scientific community. And of course, I should add that with the Ganz-Flicker, if you're photosensitive, epilepsy, there's all sorts of possibilities that are not good. So, I am not recommending this. I'm just sharing my own experiences and kind of this information. Seek out your own doctor, professional, before you choose the Ganz-Flicker route. I personally used it without any issues, but I can't speak for everybody, so I'm just throwing that out as a disclaimer. But But in terms of like, what are the differences between the two? Well, scientifically, when they've studied this, the papers kind of talk about the Gans flicker tends to bring on the visual stimulation faster. And the Gans Feld tends to hold, the imagery tends to hold longer. So like the flicker tends to produce images faster. The Feld tends to, when they are produced, they tend to hold steady a little bit longer. This is according to the scientific studies. I would say that for me, that typically, like, I would say like in the beginning stages, that's kind of correct. But then if you train with these over a period of time, you get more familiar and you can sort of, the differences between the two become less. So you can get the effects on both sides of the fence, depending on your experience, is what I would kind of say. The other thing that is interesting about this, and I need to circle back to another point, but another thing that's interesting about the Gans flicker is that the rate of the flicker rate is actually in the alpha state, alpha range, and the optimal flicker rate I think is around 10 hertz, but there's a range. And what I find very fascinating about this is that Persinger, who's a scientist who worked with Ingo Swann, who's a famous remote viewer, they studied Ingo Swann when he had EEG on his head, and he would get accurate, very accurate data about the target. Persinger would study his brain, and there was one part of his brain that went into the alpha state when he was getting good data. So I find it somewhat interesting that the flicker rate that's more optimal to produce these visual stimulations for a person with the flicker is in the alpha state. Okay, so then let me circle back. So my experiences with the flicker is that I've used it successfully to stimulate my mind, and it does come on faster. It tends to, the visuals do come on faster, in my opinion, than the Gansfeld approach. But I've used it prior to session work to kind of stimulate the brain so that the visual areas are kind of like warmed up. And then I've gone straight in with the protocols and done normal sessions using more of a Gansfeld approach. And I've been able to get good visuals right on the first page. And I really do think that that approach is highly successful for visual imagery. And let me see if I have any other information. I think that's about it. All right, so I'm going to go on to the next slide. Okay, so the relevance of visuals, the relevance of them. So we can, like Sasha kind of talked about this in her topic discussion as well. You can get visuals that are conceptual. So when we when we say direct visual perception, people typically, a beginner is going to assume like, oh, okay, I see the photograph, I see the target, I see the person. Well, yes, that is true, but you can also see other information that is not you can see a conceptual form of information as an example. So in one of my sessions, I got the skull with the wings. I saw that very clearly. And this was a conceptual representation in that particular session of a transference between realities, dimensions, realms. This was like something, it was sonoluminescence. So it was like this light appears in the scientific experiment in water. It looks like a star in a jar out of nowhere. And this was essentially saying this thing is moving from a higher level down to our level. And this was a conceptual piece of information, but it came through as a visual. So like I saw it like this, and you could assume, if you made the assumption that everything you see is literal, you just assume like, oh, that's what that was. And then when you see the target sonoluminescence, you'd be like, oh, that's a mess. No, it was good data. So the point here I'm trying to make that's important is that your visual data can be a range of information, and it can be very relevant, even if it's not literal. So you can get symbolic, like the dollar sign. You can get similes where you can get like comparisons or relationships between information that's actually presented to you as a visual. Or you can get on the far right, which Sasha showed in her session as well. I got the squid from 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. I got the mouth, and I saw that literal. So that's wonderful too. And And the other point here is just to say that the military, I think from what I've seen, their emphasis is always on the literal, right? But exactly what Sasha has said, we have found these other forms of information are super powerful. So like, I would just say that the mindset of the community is skewed much more towards literal, and that exactly what Sasha says, that cuts out a lot of the value of the data that you can actually collect if you only want to look at it through that lens. Okay, visual quality. So as a beginner, like what should you expect to see? And I'm only speaking from my experiences. I believe strongly that a lot of this is probably going to be seen by a majority of people, but I could be wrong, but I'm only using myself as a reference point. So you can see simple line drawings. So you'll see black or white, as the background, and then you'll see the opposite for the lines. And so in the case on the left here, we have the open mouth. This came in through a session that was focused on Wim Hof, and the person wanted to know, how does Wim Hof do the feats that this individual is able to do? And the individual uses specific breathing techniques. And that was the answer, is that he breathes, and exactly what he says he's doing to get his results is exactly correct. And that's what in my mind, this is what this information was communicated to me through a line drawing of an open mouth, which is an indication of movement of air. And but it came through as a simple line drawing. But a picture is worth 1,000 words. So I mean that piece of information is super useful compared to a list of adjectives where you're trying to understand how that information correlates to the target. The next level that it can come in is in these sort of 2D color or shadowy kind of forms. And as best I can, I'm actually literally trying to show you what I see in my mind. It's not perfect, but it's a reasonable approximation. So I will see things that look like particles or haze or hazy clouds or shadows. Basically these forms, and they first started out as gray forms, black and white is how they first were introduced to me. And these forms kind of shift and move around, and like in the bottom one, you're looking at it and you go like, well, and I see it. I think it's a house. It might have 2 windows. That's really all you can really say about it. It's difficult to make much more of a conclusion than that. When you get color into those, then you can start to say like, oh, okay, yeah, it's definitely a house. Like the color kind of brings out enough value that it's much easier for you to tell that it's clearly a house, the color of the house, and things of that nature, but it's still two-dimensional, still flat. It's still difficult to kind of make out what it is. And then, yeah, I think that's that. And then we go to the next slide. So then the shadows move to 3D forms, both black and white in color. And this is sort of stage 2. And when this happens, it becomes much easier. Again, still difficult, but I'm saying much easier than it was previously to see things like the spatial depth comes in. So now when you see something that looks like a house and you see the length of the house, you're like, aha, that's a house or a barn or something like that. You can tell the approximate maybe shape of it, proportionally. You may be able to estimate distances. You can clearly see that there's 2 windows, like that for sure is very clear to you now. You may be able to pick up a chimney or some other artifacts around the house. You can definitely tell the siding. Like on 2D, I can't tell the siding of things. Like, is it wood siding? Is it planks? Is it brick? Like, it's very difficult to tell. But when it moves into 3D, all of a sudden you get enough depth where this stuff starts to pop out. And of course, with color, under the same conditions, it gets even easier. Then you'll start to move into things that are more photographic, and these can range from photographs, movies, real life, even beyond real life, in different aspects. And they can be fuzzy, they can be clear, they can come in, they can come in all sorts of different forms. But essentially, when you move into this stage, it gets much easier to articulate details, because instead of just being a house, you'll be like, oh, there's a house and there's some trees and you'll start to quickly be able to communicate higher levels of information when you get to this level of visual. And it, like I said, it can be a range of value that comes out of that. And also, because I've had a lot of psychic spiritual experiences, and spontaneously you can have, in those experiences, you can have things like 360-degree vision, as an example. And you have to understand that when you're doing these things, your eyes are not real. You're not using your real eyes. So technically speaking, you can go beyond the limitations of them because you're not being bound by physical constraints. So I bring this up because it's possible to have abnormalities in these situations when you're trying to remote view that might match things that happen spontaneously with normal psychic type of activities. Yeah, it's just a point I'm going to make. And then I apologize, I'm remembering a couple key points I just want to make real quick. With going back here to the Ganzfeld and the masks, my experience with the Ganzfeld, I use a mask with open eyes. And I tested this for years ago for quite a while. And I tested both closed-eyed with a mask on and just closed-eyed with a mask off, the same thing, or open-eyed with a mask on. Open-eyed worked better, and in my opinion, the reason it worked better is because when our eyes are open, we are conditioned to expect that we will see real-life visuals. And so what I noticed was that the visual clarity of my work went up significantly more when I did that. But when I closed my eyes, I got more memory, imagination, kind of level quality imagery. Like there was a very distinct difference between the two. I could see it. And I believe that that is the reason why that occurred in my case, and I suspect that would work for others. And so it's a point that I wanted to make. And there was a second point here, and I just forgot again. So I'm sorry. But anyways, if it comes back to me, I'll circle back. So yeah, so you can move through these ranges as a beginner, usually kind of line to shadowy or clouds or static or pixels or something like dots, things of that nature, to more photographic, which can have motion and all sorts of stuff. Now, what are some of the additional considerations with visuals? You can get other things. When you start developing yourself with these visuals, there are other things that can start to happen. You can get downloads. And the download will be like a burst of visuals that you get, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 visuals, just boom, one right after another. And most of the time, these visuals, as a beginner, they are fast. They're usually like a second or two. And so when you get these downloads, you might have like 2 seconds or 3 seconds or even a second and a half, and you literally just get like bombarded with these images. So that's possible. There are other levels to this as well beyond downloads, but I'm not sure I really want to talk about it right now in terms of my experiences. But I haven't heard anybody else in the community talk about it, so I'm not sure if it's how common it is. But another very well-known level of sort of visual is by location, where you feel that you're at the target, where your remote viewing is so good, you magically sort of, in some way, shape, or form, appear at the target in a way that is more immersive, as if you were in real life, kind of a thing. It can go to that level. So I bring this up because all of my bilocations that I've had have occurred as a result of a visual. And I say this because I feel it's an important piece of information. I'm quite certain you can have a bilocation that has nothing to do with you trying to directly perceive visually the target. However, I suspect that by training yourself to see visuals directly, you will increase the percentage chance of bilocation happening because it's one step closer to actually being physically at the site. The other thing I would say is that just like with the conceptual information that you can get at the earlier stages that I talked about a couple slides back, this can happen with bilocation because I've experienced it. So it's like you can be at the site and it can seem very real, but it's not actually the target like, oh, you're at the person's house or whatever. Nope, you're getting conceptual information, and you're immersed into that information at a level that's so extreme that it actually seems like you're at that environment, whatever that thing conceptually looks like. But technically, it's still just conceptual data. So this is another thing that I experienced that I thought I might mention. Okay, last slide, I believe. So how could you maybe approach this and increase your visual capacity? Like, what are some of the ways, if you start to engage in this process and it's challenging, which it will be, like how could you maybe improve this? Well, one of them is visual memory exercises. There's computer games, things of that nature. But there's one exercise that's interesting where you either use a complex photo, which I've shown here as an example of the photo, and then below is sort of my sketch from the photo. Or you could go to storefronts. So you could go to like a complex strip mall or something, walk up to the building, someplace you've never been to before, look in the store, and give yourself like 2 seconds. The same thing for the photo. The same exercise, just using photo or real life, but it's like 2 seconds. You then go back to your car. If it was at the store, you go back to your car, you sit down, and you try to sketch and write down words and ideas and sketches and like everything that you possibly remember in that 2 seconds. Same thing for the photo, as best you can. So this practice will help to increase the likelihood that you're able to transcribe the information that you see visually during these remote viewing sessions. And the other thing that I found to be utterly fascinating, maybe everybody else will be bored to tears, and that's okay. I get it. But for me, because it helped with my work as well, I found mind-blowing to me was when I would sketch the results for this, which I have an example down below, I could start to actually see my biases. I could actually start to map these out. I could actually start to see where my mind or memory is faulting and where it's very good. And like as an example on this one, there's a woman in a dress, yellow dress, bright yellow dress right at the front. I'm a guy. It's like, of course, I'm going to remember, like, everything else in the photo could be gone. It's like, I'm going to remember that. So it's like, I got that detail very well down in my sketch, right? But I also got the guy at the front very, very well. I got that there was a stand he was next to, which was correct. I got the positions correct. And basically what I can tell from this is like the foreground stuff, I'm able to grab a hold of that detail pretty well. When you push back, the detail starts to fall away a bit more. I can also start to look at the gestalts of the buildings and figure out which pieces I resonate with more than others. So you might see, triangles or rectangles or circles or ovals or something in a picture for structures. For whatever reason, you tend to grab those, but you have more difficult time with other aspects. Or like in the case of this one, this example down here, which you probably can't see very well, but there's a red chair in that photo on the right down towards the side. I got red scooter. So I got something that was a similar size, correct color, correct position, but they're both objects, but I got the wrong object. So this is where you can kind of check yourself and go like, oh, interesting. Like there was one case where there was a girl that was like 14 or something, and she was carrying flowers, and I sketched that she had a purse on the correct arm and everything, because it's like I knew she had something there, but I took a guess, and then my bias came in, right? So this is a way for you to really study your own mind, how it works, and you can get a feeling for when your data is a maybe versus a more solid thing through this process on the paper. And so when you do your session work, you can start to make it easier for you to go like, yeah, I'm pretty confident of this piece not so much. And so you're going to say like, it could be X, Y, and Z. And you know what I mean? Like you can kind of communicate it better so that your quality of data is correct. The last thing here is dreams. So if you record your dreams, if you wake up, write your dreams down and improve that memory process for remembering visually the information that came in through your dreams. And I think I know why this works, the mechanism for it, but you should see your results improve through the remote viewing process, these visuals as well. And you can test it for yourself. I could be wrong, but if you do, let me know your feedback on this. But I believe that based on my own experiences, what you should see is you'll see it becomes easier for you to hold more data in these remote viewing visual flashes than it would be otherwise. And then here's some citations from some of the stuff that I referenced. And that was the last piece of data is when you look at these scientific studies, which are amazing to look at, they give you some clues as to how things work and how they might relate to remote viewing and visuals that you pull in remote viewing. Understand one key thing, because I have seen where some of the stuff is accurate and some of it is not from my experiences. The subjects are not using intent during these sessions. They're usually very passive. They're not active. Remote viewing is very actively, aggressively trying to get visual data. This is a difference that is not introduced into these sessions, into these scientific papers. And so you have to kind of weigh that in and understand that there could be variances that don't apply to remote viewing and some that do because of this delta. And then there's my disclaimer, and I think that is it. Any questions?
That was wonderful. Thank you, David. Does anyone have any questions?
I do. In terms of the Ganzfeld and Ganzflicker approaches that you discussed, do you do those just as experiments on the side, or do you integrate that in your remote viewing session work often? Or do you do your remote viewing session and then you do that on the side at another time? Or was that just for experiments and now you just do that during your session just with your eyes closed?
Yeah, so I have used them experimentally to understand better, deeper understandings, but yeah, I definitely use them both at different times for session work. Absolutely, yes. Yeah, they're both scientifically, you can see it just from the papers, it's a tried true method to inducing visuals, and it works. So yeah, absolutely, it's part of my process.
Cool.
A question when it comes to developing more visual detail, like acuity with like color and like dimensionality and so on. I was wondering what in your experience has been like the overall kind of latency between those different phases, or what kind of things depends on that.
Yeah, so as a beginner, my first visuals were line drawings. Primarily, that's all I got for maybe the first, I don't know, like 3-6 sessions practice sessions that I was doing when I first started kind of trying to induce this, through this process, through the methods and stuff. But then it moved, after that, it moved into the 2D gray shadowy stuff. And that lasted for maybe, I would say like it became a mix between the line and the shadow visuals would come in over the next like 20 sessions or something. And during some time during there, I started to get color as well. And I would say after maybe 20 sessions, roughly 30 sessions, somewhere in there, then I started to get, I still always get, I can get both of those even now. But then I started to get more photographic color type of communications. And so from that point forward, it was a mix of any of those three. I would say typically I get today, it seems like it tends to be either line drawing or like photo level stuff, which when I say that, it's a range, right? So it's not necessarily super clear or exactly like a photo, but it's not the shadowy stuff and it's not line drawing. Does that help?
Yeah, it does. Thanks.
Okay, any other questions, or should we move on to John?
We can move on to John, or I can ask you about rotating a visual if you just want to say a few words about that, whether you're able to, because I have aphantasia, I'm a conceptual viewer, I do get visuals, I have had bilocation, but my normal remote viewing experience, I think, is so removed. So when I see David's presentation, I feel like I'm watching an alien talking about a completely different experience.
Right.
He first showed me, the slide with the houses, and I was like, is that like, do you see that? Is this really real? And
Yeah.
so we just have different experiences. But one of the things that I know, because of the way my mind works, I don't, I can't even visualize an apple and I can't even visualize the apple, let alone make it rotate or move it around, right? And if I'm remote viewing, I can maybe, depending on the target and the state I'm in, I can see it. That's rare. Usually I understand it to be there. But so are you able to rotate some of the target data that comes through to you?
Yeah. After years of development, so it wasn't like right out of the gate, right? But yeah, I'm at a point now where essentially I can typically hold an image longer, and I know how to do that. Like there's a process that for it actually, but you can hold an image longer so you can study it. You can also, depending on the image, frequently I'm able to just like instantly know spatially all the information, so I can just start sketching side views, top views. Like I don't have to do movement orders or anything. I just instantly know all the information. And other times I actually just kind of slide around, like I see it this way and I have a desire to see it at a different angle and I immediately see the other angle. So it can be kind of a range of different things. But yeah, it's absolutely possible to move around within, rotate it and all this kind of stuff, or just see another element or angle to it. And again, I don't think I'm special. I believe everybody can do this. Aphantasia aside, I get that part, but I'm saying like normal people that don't have that issue, I think most people when they attempt to do this, they will over time be able to succeed and have similar experiences.
And even those of us with aphantasia, we do find ways to see in our own little sneaky methods. Thank you so much, David. That was brilliant. And so now we both John Herlosky and Michael Strange have joined us. So hello, gentlemen. Thank you for being here. So we're going to start with John. We're going to have a little bit of a conversation with John. And then Michael, you'll be up after that. So John, I'm just going to see if I can move you around on screen. I'm going to share the book. So just give me a quick moment so that I can give people a bit of a sense of some of your work. There we go. And then a few things that I wanted to say. So John Herlosky is considered an expert in the field of human performance technologies. And he was the co-director and co-founder of the nonprofit think tank, the Institute for Evolutionary Technologies. He's also the co-director of Project Trojan Warrior 2, which was a mind-body integration training program. And that's really relevant to remote viewing. And I think we're going to talk about that a little bit. David might have some questions about that. And the book that he has that I'm showing now, The Sorcerer's Apprentice, A Skeptic's Journey into the CIA's Project Stargate and Remote Viewing. I'm going to use that as the launch point for our conversation. I am delighted to have this opportunity to talk to you, John. And so if you wanted to say a few words of hello to introduce yourself, and then I'm going to ask you how you went from a skeptic to an operational remote viewer.
Hello, everyone. For those of you out there that are novices or beginning remote viewers, understand something. There are some who, like Joe McMoneagle or Mel Riley or Lynn Buchanan, who were aware of their abilities when they were very young. I was like David Morehouse, one of the Stargate remote viewers, in that I had the psychic ability of a sack of hammers. And that is that I never had a psychic experience in my life, up to the point where I learned about remote viewing and took classes with David Morehouse. And for those of you out there who believe that they may not have the ability, trust me, you do. It's a natural ability for people, And everybody has it in various degrees. Some of us are lucky, like myself and others, that it allows them to do operational work. For those of you out there, one of the reasons I was asked to come on board was because of the idea that remote viewing is an intensely personal experience. Each of us sees the world a different way. Some of you have complained, and this was pretty normal in the classes that I helped Dave Morehouse teach in both CRV and extended remote viewing, in that many viewers complained that they didn't get visuals. Each of us has specialties when it comes to remote viewing, just like in any endeavor. For myself and Dave Morehouse, we both were visual, and we had really very expansive visuals. But that doesn't mean that those of you who have different modalities can't have those visuals either. In one of the ERV classes that I helped Dave Morehouse teach, the common complaint was, I wish I had more visuals. I'm not getting visuals. And a lot of people were jealous of the fact that I had bilocations where I had what Lynn Buchanan would call perfect site integration, where it was as if you were there at the target site. I don't know why that was. I just lucked out, as did Dave. But I found that in talking with the individuals, the beginners who were taking the course, in listening to their complaint, I realized that most of them had this negative tent towards visuals, meaning that I can't see visuals because I don't think I can see visuals. Remote viewing is intent driven, okay? The only reason that we're able to do this is intent behind the tasker and intent behind the viewer himself. So one of the things I used to share with them was the fact that if you want more visuals, then intend to have them. The cool down session for remote viewers is not there just to relax and get comfortable and stuff like that. It's there for a reason. And one of the reasons is to, number one, reinforce the intention to access the target. The second thing that you can do in situations like that, if you feel that you're not getting enough visuals, is to intend to have visuals. During the cool down, intend yourself. Make it a wish, a demonstrative, whatever you want to do. But say to yourself, I want more visuals. I want to visualize the target. It works. And the reason it works is because remote viewing is intention driven. When I was with Dave Morehouse in my ERV classes, extended remote viewing, which tends to be much more engaging visually, we were given a target and we failed miserably. This was my first ERV class. I mean, all of us failed miserably. Dave was really disappointed because all of us were taken from his previous CRV classes and we were all excellent. So he said, you know what? I'm going to go to the target this time. We're going back. I'm going to go to the target and I'm going to do something to bring you all in. And I'm telling you now because I want you to have the intention to be able to see what I'm going to do. You are going back to the target. You are going to see what I'm going to do, and you are going to see the target. So I went back into session, dropped down to the target, and there was the target. I wasn't quite sure what it was. It looked like a building, but there was this intense, oppressive pressure around me. And there was this like stuff floating all around like snow. And I looked and I saw like a wall, and it had like a fence across the top of it, but it was clumped and thick. And as I got closer, a light shined out from the area that I was looking at. So I went towards it. Unfortunately, as happens sometimes when you are in a group, one of the other people who was involved in the ERV class snorted. He had sleep apnea, and it yanked me back from the target. But I wrote down what I saw. You know, this flat plane-like thing, the wall, the fence, and it turns out the target was the Titanic. And that clumped fence, I thought, was the railing that had been encrusted with marine life. But the light, there is no light at 15,000 feet. Dave Morehouse told us he went to the bow of the ship and waved a conceptual torch to bring all the
No. A little bit of a delay.
A little bit of a glitch.
Oh,
John, you're,
just when he's getting to the secrets.
I know. It's always right when the secrets come out that mysteriously the internet connection doesn't work as well.
It's fascinating.
Yeah. So, John, if you can hear us, you're frozen. I'm going to chitter chatter until you unfreeze. But this is really significant what John is talking about right now. It's this idea of being able to, in consciousness, go to the target that you've tasked a group of viewers and illuminate it, make it more visible to them, shine a light that you are conceptualizing. And then somehow the remote viewers then are picking up on this bright light above the target, and it can help them make their way to the target more easily. And this is something that, you know, because I've heard, it's funny, I heard John talk about it a couple years ago in a Daz chat, which is an online remote viewing related live stream. And I kind of forgot about it. And then as I was doing tasking for the live streams and for other remote viewers, for advanced remote viewers, I found myself naturally developing my own process to do the same thing. So, and for the live stream group, sometimes I do it and sometimes I don't. Sometimes I do it for some of the target codes, some I don't. Sometimes I'll do it for the retask, but not the original, because I don't want to make anyone dependent on my illumination of a target for them to be able to make their way to the target. And so that's one of the things I do is I try to mix it around. John, you're back. Let's see. While we wait for that to load.
I got dropped off.
No worries. You're at the most crucial point. So if you can pick back up, if you can pick back up from Morehouse illuminating the target.
Well, like I said, I saw the light, and so did all of the other viewers. So intention drives a session. Okay. Later in that class, I had a young lady tell me that she was having a real hard time in seeing visuals. So at the next target, I was just sitting back. I wasn't doing anything. And I thought about what she was saying. And as the cool down started, I thought, you know what? Maybe I could do something like Dave did and try it with her. So at the last moment, I jumped into my ERV mode, cooled down with the class, and I jumped to the target ahead of her. So I was there on the target. And I watched her drop into the target because that's what my intention was. And when she did, I looked at her and I said, "Hey, I'm here. I want you to see me." And I waved at her. And she saw me, and I saw this surprised look on her face. And I thought, you know, I need to get out because I don't want to ruin her session. So I jumped back out. And I wondered if she had actually seen me or if this was just a transient. So I waited and I waited. And finally, at the end of the class, when the warm up was announced and the session was over, I saw her go to her workstation, start writing and everything else. And I thought, well, maybe she didn't see me. Maybe nothing happened, which is probably better because I didn't want to really ruin her session and I was really out of protocol. When she finished writing, she looked around, she saw me, and she marched straight over to me, and she looked at me and she said, "You went to the session, didn't you, to see me?" And I didn't say anything. She stamped her foot, said, "You went, didn't you?" And I said, "Yes, I did." And she said, "Thank you." So the ability to see in ERV or in CRV is intention driven. Have the intention, see the target.
Yeah, that's amazing. And Sasha and I have seen similar things in our own work. It's such a powerful thing, right? The intent of an individual to actually affect. So part of this kind of gets into the idea of remote influencing in a little bit of a way, like in a positive kind of way. Another part of it is just the idea of the intent being so powerful from the individual, like for your own session work, you know, that you're able to do things that you didn't think you could do. It's utterly fascinating. Did you have a question, Sasha?
I was going to say, you know, my experiences really do validate for me what you're saying, because when I was trying to get more physical description of the target, especially for things that don't interest me, I tend to be able to get great data on things that are fascinating, technical. But if there's just someone doing something boring, then I find it hard to find them. Or if someone wants me to describe a building, a cinder block, I couldn't care less. And so I have had to train myself by doing exactly that. I have to do a page where I intend, like, okay, I am going to see this really boring building and I'm going to see the details of it. And that intention allows me to get the data that I need to satisfy the tasker. And so I do think, you know, one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about, because we have this shared perspective, I think, about the data that the data stream is offering you, you're experiencing it through your human sensory apparatus, right? You're smelling, you're feeling the touch, you're feeling the textures, you're seeing it visually. But at the end of the day, the way I understand it is it's still just data, even when you're bilocating. And this is something that David's touched upon and I've touched upon, and I hear in what you're saying as well. Oh, did he just drop? Yes, he did.
No.
I'm just gonna keep talking. And so what I was saying is, because I know he understands, so he can jump in when he gets back on. But it's this idea that even when you're bilocating, a lot of people think that they're bilocating to the target, that they're at the target, and therefore that all the information that they saw in their bilocation is 100% accurate. And that's just not the case. You're still getting data and you're interpreting it, you're experiencing it through your sensory apparatus, but it's you're not physically necessarily there, and there's still that room for the distortions that come, the interpretations, the biases. John, you're back.
Yeah, at least audio.
Very good. I know Michael's saying
I'm
internet
sorry,
volumes are tired.
I didn't realize that I was going to have so much problems.
That's
No,
okay.
it's all good. Oh, one of our other presenters, Hilde Latour, who was going to talk about the rice experiment data that the live stream group did a few months ago, she wasn't able to get it to work. We tried for about half an hour, and so in the end, we just said, well, maybe another day.
More secrets that are lost now.
Yeah, I think though, here's a tip though, if you do have a browser security permissions or a firewall, what I have to do for this to work for me is I actually have to disable my antivirus while I'm live streaming to StreamYard. So that might help. But so while you were dipping out and back in again, I was just kind of saying that yes, that the data from the data stream comes through us, and we experience it in an experiential way. We feel that we're there, but that's a seductive and dangerous assumption to make, because actually you're still just interpreting data, and that data is still maybe being distorted. You still have your own bias, you still have those distortions, and so you might think, like you were saying about the Titanic, in a way you felt, I'm there, I can see the light, I can see this, I can see that, but some of the details are wrong sometimes, or skewed, or there's a misinterpretation of some of the details. You see a fence, but it's actually a railing. And I think for a lot of remote viewers,
sure.
right, they find that hard to
But
understand.
You have to understand something. Remote viewers are not analysts. We are cameras. We go to the target, we write down what we experience, and it's up to the analyst to make sense of it. It is not the remote viewer's job. Okay? And you don't want to get into the idea of analysis. That's not your job as a remote viewer.
Yeah, I think that's key. And I don't know if you saw some of my presentation earlier, but yes, that you do have to separate out the analysis. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no question about it.
One of the things we had talked about is, oh, yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, for those of you out there who are novices or beginning remote viewers, take heart. I had people who had never seen an image. They got impressions, but they never saw an image. But after I worked with them, and they took my words to heart, they saw imagery. So remember, remote viewing is intention driven. Have the intention to access the target, have the intention to access visuals, or whatever other data you want, depending upon what you're dealing with. A lot of targets, you have to understand, may not be great visual targets. They may be great other modality targets, meaning smells, tastes, touches, or sound. Some of the really good remote viewers that I worked with were amazing at being able to access information that blew me away. I mean, things like Sandra, my old friend and fellow remote viewer. We were given a target, and she had this idea of dolphins written on her page. The target was the Australian opera house in Sydney, which has the appellation of the Dolphins, because that was the designer's intent. She picked up on that. So understand something. Each of us fits a piece into the puzzle. That's the difference between remote viewing and other forms of intelligence gathering. We are just there to add to the puzzle, okay?
Yeah, and John, you know, when you were talking about the power of intent, it's something that Sasha and I have kind of talked about before, at least from my experiences with different training in the community over decades of time, is that you're kind of you're as a viewer, there's no, it's like a passive thing. You're not, at least the training I got from different people, there was no sort of like what you're describing. So you end up kind of just generically collecting information without any kind of like real driving focus for you as a viewer to get or collect information. So you just get the protocol, you know, go through the protocols, and it just becomes more of like a broad sweep, and then maybe whatever interests that you have kind of pop out. But in terms of being more strategic in your approach, that's where, like you were saying, if you have a more mindful intent kind of approach to the problem as the viewer itself, you get a better result, at least in my experience.
Yeah, yeah. And I would encourage everyone, talking about Trojan Warrior and Trojan Warrior 2, these were special forces classified programs that were designed to enhance the abilities of the soldiers. When I went through that training, one of the really cool things about that is that it enhanced my ability to see in remote viewing. So I encourage everyone. There are a number of biofeedback equipment out there. I would suggest that you might try using it, because it can enhance your focus and your abilities, really.
I was going to ask you
I
about
think
this.
that
So,
was one of the reasons why I was a better remote viewer, was because of the fact that I had EEG biofeedback training through the Trojan Warrior 2 program.
in the project Trojan Warrior 2, so this is the mind-body integration for military/police. Did you want to say a little bit more about some of the methods that they used to enhance their psychic ability by integrating the mind and body?
Sure. Well, back in 1985, a company called SportsMind was approached by the Special Forces to bring up a program, or actually, they brought the program to Special Forces and said, we have a way to make your soldiers better. It was called Trojan Warrior, and it was, I believe, there were 2 ODAs that were involved. These were A-teams from the Special Forces, and they learned things like meditation, yoga, the martial arts like Aikido, and EEG biofeedback, temperature biofeedback, and a number of other technologies that were unknown to the Army at that time. And the soldiers that underwent the training thought that it was useless. It was more than useless. It was touchy-feely stuff. But the funny thing is, when they had the field training exercises that winter, these 2 teams kicked ass. They performed outstandingly in the field training exercise, and they finally admitted that the training they underwent was the reason why. The problem was that the rest of the people in the Army didn't see the application. It's too touchy-feely for them. They wanted bullets, they wanted guns, they wanted tanks. So the program was never reinstituted, unfortunately.
That's a shame. We see that, it's something David just mentioned in his presentation. We see
Yeah.
that today as well. And it's something that I've talked about previously in one of our live streams, that the military has had so much control over the development of remote viewing. And so it has developed it for its own ends. And that is not always in line with the purposes for which we're using remote viewing today. And this sounds very similar in that they wanted it to be hardcore, they wanted to be bullets, they wanted to be aggressive and violent. They don't necessarily want people to be sitting in the lotus position prior to getting on the battlefield in order to be maybe a better marksman. And so it's interesting that there's that pushback, even when they perform at a higher level. There's still this desire to have something that's less, what's the word, ethereal, or they want something tangible, measurable, quantitative, I guess.
Right. But we have made inroads, and I point to this as an example. A captain in the Navy SEALs, Bremseth, wrote a paper at the War College talking about asymmetric warfare and remote viewing. So it's still in the minds back there. And it's still a possibility for the future.
Yeah, fascinating. John, thank you for your service. I have police officers in my family as well, and I almost became one a couple times. In terms of the EEG feedback and the biofeedback with that aspect, is that covered? Like, could you either cover it, kind of the process for it a little bit here, or is it covered in detail somewhere like in your book? So if somebody wanted to replicate that, where would they go to find that information?
When I was in Trojan Warrior 2, the equipment we used was bulky. It was expensive. The system that I trained on was $15,000. Nowadays, you can go online and get the Muse, which is a EEG biofeedback device, for a couple of $100. And that's what I have, and that's what I use. So that's no longer, in the realm of special programs and stuff like that. You can get stuff like that now and use it. And I would encourage you to do so. The more EEG biofeedback you do, the more focus you are going to have in your sessions. And trust me, focus is what you want. Focus and coherence.
Yeah. Are there any other questions for John?
Maybe a small one. I don't want to be the negative Apple, but we've been speaking about bringing light, so making a session shiny, but that also means that somebody could do the reverse and try to deflect the attention of the session. So I would imagine for something very secretive that this could be applied. But then you have the other part with what John has been saying, that everything is about intent. So I guess in the end, it ends with who has the bigger intent. The viewer that says, I want to bypass even somebody who would be deflecting me, or are there deflecting approaches that can really bypass? Did you have experience with that, or you never faced that kind of issue?
Okay. In any endeavor that I've known about in remote viewing, I have never heard of a situation where a remote viewer was distracted from the target or was not able to get to the target. Okay. I don't know where people come up with this idea that remote viewing can be blocked. It can't. I'm sorry, but it can't. There is no way you can block a remote viewer. And I know from personal experience, as well as from operational targets that I've done that I can't really talk about, but I have never, ever been able to not access a target and come back with realistic data. Sorry, but it doesn't happen. There is no shielding. There is no way.
Yep, which makes sense, because if everything is intent, then I guess if your intent is to go directly to the target, even if somebody would try to deflect you, I guess you can bypass it.
And understand something too. I mean, you bring up a salient point. When I went to the target to visualize that young lady, I went with the intent to do so. How would you know that that an individual was targeting something remote viewing wise? How would you know? I've heard apocryphal accounts of people saying, yeah, I saw that person at the target and everything else. But to tell you the truth, in my 25 years in operational remote viewing, I have never seen another remote viewer unless I had the intention to do so. And most of the time when you do operational work, you aren't looking for another remote viewer. You're looking for the target. So it's not an issue.
Okay.
Claudia, you have a question?
Yes, you were talking about a biofeedback device. What's that?
Biofeedback. An EEG biofeedback device connects to your brainwave activity.
Okay.
And because the brain is so plastic, you can actually make changes in your neurology by the use of biofeedback. I use it to increase my concentration and focus, because that's what you need in remote viewing: concentration and focus. Because all too often, especially in ERV, you can lose focus and leave the target area. And what you need to have is the focus and the concentration to stay in the target area to bring back information. And that's what I found to be the most helpful about biofeedback devices.
And just a clarifying point, I'm making an assumption. I just wanted to see if you agreed. The ERV, the reason that is more of an issue is because there's less structure compared to the other protocols that people use, and so it's a little bit easier to go without the concentration being the anchor. Basically, that's more problematic, right?
I'm not exactly sure what you're trying to say. In ERV, because number one, you're at a very, very deep hypnagogic state. In order to stay in that state, you really need focus, because it doesn't take much to drop out of focus and suddenly you find yourself out of the target.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
So, Chris, I want to come back to your question, but after Michael's and your presentation. So at the end of the presentations, we can kind of have a bit of a free-for-all and talk about some of these topics more in depth, I think. And so for now, though, I'd like to, if that's okay with you, John, we'll have Michael Strange present, and then Chris will be presenting his website, and then we can open up for a broader conversation. Does that sound good?
Sounds
and
good.
John, John, you're frozen. So good timing. And so, Michael Strange, I'm going to move things around a little bit, and I'm going to show. Well, I don't know if I think you can screen share it, but for the audience, let me give a little bit of information about you. So Michael Strange is the host of Troubled Minds Radio. It streams on YouTube, Rumble, Spotify, iTunes, the web, other places you go to find podcasts and live streams. And basically what Michael does is he guides listeners through, according to his website and my experience of his show, conversations that challenge conventional wisdom. He explores everything from ancient mystical practices to cutting-edge theories about the nature of existence itself. And somewhere along that spectrum, he does discuss remote viewing and remote viewing related topics. And that's how we came to talk. And it's why he is finding himself here today, because I came across his show. I came across the topics I thought were fascinating. Michael, you have great insights and you're very knowledgeable. And you have also a great audience and a great chat, I have to say, as well. And so Michael Show refuses to accept superficial explanations, and that's rare these days on the internet and on YouTube. So I think that's of really great value. He digs deeper into the patterns and the synchronicities that reveal hidden truths about our world. And that's what I find, I think, the most fascinating, because as a remote viewing data analyst, the synchronicities are my everyday life. And so it's a topic that I find really, really interesting. And so I do tune in when I can. My schedule is always shifting from day to night, and your show is late at night. So sometimes when I have my morning coffee, I'm listening to your show and I'm there in chat. But so when I'm feeling opinionated or when I'm just really excited about a specific topic, I do try to jump in. And so I do encourage people to check out Troubled Minds. And so, Michael, I'm very happy to have you here participating. And if you're ready, I will let you take the floor.
Ready. Yeah, thank you for the kind words there and the plug. We don't need it. I appreciate it. Here's the thing. When you talk about remote viewing and a lot of the stuff you guys have been considering tonight are absolutely mind-blowing to me, because I like to consider not just, let's say, the practice of it, or let's say the protocols or how it kind of leads you into this space. I had a great question too regarding what was it John? I think that's what he was saying just a second ago. But I'll back burner that and ask it as I get out of here. But regarding, let's say, the remote view itself and the mind's eye and how it can kind of Eye of Sauron style kind of look at things in particular places or even different times, right? Because go to Joe McMoneagle, infamously has been said that he was able to remote view Mars 1 million years ago, something like that, right? So it's basically taking the mind's eye, stepping outside of reality and being able to kind of look at that, well, the substrate of reality itself. And so recently we had a conversation on Troubled Minds about John C. Lilly. And many of you know, David was talking about the Ganzfeld effect earlier and that protocol and sort of the sensory deprivation aspect. And John C. Lilly was actually a pioneer there. He did create the sensory deprivation tank in a way to basically decouple the, let's say, the reality of the meat suit experience, as I always like to call it, that just being human versus consciousness itself, and then kind of be able to decouple those things by depriving the entire body of sensory experience entirely, which of course means that once that happens, and we're familiar with the tank, it's the salt water, so you're floating, it's almost as if you're in a void, almost as if you're in a particular space without any body constraints, okay? But the bizarre part is that your mind in that capacity, just like the Ganzfeld effect, ends up becoming consciousness itself. It starts to embody who we really are, okay? And to me, that's one of the most fascinating parts about remote viewing. And I'm not a remote viewer. It's not something I practice. I have done a couple protocols here or there. And the first time I did it twice, and I won't, not to plug somebody else, but I looked into somebody else's stuff because they gave me access to it. And the first one, I did it in earnest. I was trying really hard, and I failed miserably. And the second one, I kind of nailed, and I was like, "This is too spooky for me," so I stopped. Right, and not because let's say that clearly there was it's a small sample size, obviously, and it's one of those things where you actually consider, okay, so if this is real, where are we getting this information from? Because clearly, consciousness itself is one of those, I don't know, wild and weird and wacky things that is still yet to be quantified entirely. And will we ever? I'm not so sure about that. But back to the sensory deprivation part of that, it almost feels like our consciousness and our mind wants to escape. And I don't mean, leave entirely. I mean, sort of wander the cosmos and be able to do this remote viewing, be able to do, Robert Monroe's out of body experience, astral stuff, even, sort of lucid dreaming. Maybe we're kind of touching on the same place. And the reason I bring that up is because it looks like, regarding, in my opinion, again, I'm not an expert here. I'm not an expert in anything, by the way, but in my opinion, at least in the moment, I'm willing to change my mind tomorrow based on new evidence, of course. But it seems to me that remote viewing itself and all of these other protocols that are similar, they're not the same, similar, at least in my mind's eye, are really dialing into the substrate of reality itself. And in some places, some cases, let's say in esoteric thought, it's something to the effect of, the Akashic records, something like that, where time is a flat circle. It's not linear like humans actually experience it. And, many people have said philosophically that time is a human construct. And so in terms of the Akashic records, or let's say with the mind's eye peering beyond the veil, that would be a paranormal sense of this, but also the substrate of reality itself, in my opinion, really leads us to one of the most logical conclusions to me in the moment. I hate it, but that would be simulation theory. And so the substrate of reality itself would actually be that sort of matrix green rain code that we can't read entirely. We kind of get a glimpse of from time to time through these meditative aspects, or again, the protocols of remote viewing, whatever it looks like. And so it ends up becoming another philosophical question, is where are we getting this information from? Clearly it's our mind's eye. Clearly it's a protocol. It's a practice, all of these things. But when you start to look at, the 1980 film Altered States, which is based on John Lilly's work, which he gets into dolphins and some other really weird stuff that is not necessary bringing up. But do check that out. That the show is called, if you're interested in that, it's called Isolated Consciousness. The Collision of Mind is what we did when we had that conversation. But the wild part to me is where does it come from? And David earlier was talking about downloads. And it's the same idea of, okay, so you can kind of catch maybe a shadow fragment with a remote view. You can catch this, or as John was saying as well, be able to see something, but not catch all of it. Because again, if you're a human looking this way, you've got your peripheral vision on both sides, up and down, left and right, all the stuff. You notice some things there, but you don't really see them. So, I mean, all of that makes sense. It's almost as if you're in that space with that Sauron mind's eye, as I like to call it, but then you can't see everything. We can't see 360 degrees period. So that makes a ton of sense. And so when you look at all of this and that sensory deprivation bit and that substrate of reality, it makes me wonder exactly where this information comes from. And that to me is probably the most fascinating part, because it's an endless open-ended question, right? And what I mean by that is that, is there really an answer? And I don't know. I don't really know. But a couple things that were super fascinating about John C. Lilly is he was discussing the idea. He wrote about this years and years and years ago, back in the 60s, I believe it was. But he was talking about two particular things. Specifically, they were called, what are these things? I got some notes here. One moment, please. SSI, what he called solid state intelligence. Now, frame this in the sense of beyond the veil, or the Akashic records, or that time is a flat circle where all information exists simultaneously in one space, whatever you want to call that, the ether, the quantum foam, beyond the veil, a lot of ways to consider it, right? But SSI is, he basically built out this duality of creation thing with this SSI. And it stands for, it's a theoretical, non-organic form of intelligence, solid state intelligence is what he calls it, originating from solid state electronics and computers. John C. Lilly speculated that this technology, advanced artificial intelligence, could emerge from these systems and operate independently of biological life. Now, the bizarre part about that is it kind of takes us into that space of the organic versus the machine, which has long been a fear of ours forever, right? It's been, we're going to be replaced. It's going to destroy us. It's going to eat us, all these things, right? It's going to take our jobs, everything. We're supposed to be afraid of this. And through his experience of, I wouldn't call it remote viewing per se, but he was definitely channeling some information, very much like Philip K. Dick, like we've talked about in the past as well. But in this particular instance, this solid state intelligence was malevolent. It wanted to somehow sap our energy, or, you know, as what Gnostic Archon, something like this, was drawing our loosh from us, our fear energy, or whatever else. But also, on the other hand, back to that duality of creation, which was Philip K. Dick and sort of his idea of the architect and the dark counterplayer. If you guys ever heard his lecture on that, it was fascinating as hell. But and just an aside on Philip K. Dick, he was able to sort of see into these alternate realities, into that substrate of what might it be? Might it be, again, do we live in base reality? And that's back to simulation theory or the many worlds theory. There's a lot of ways to look at this, but he was able to see into it. And if you guys are familiar with The Man in the High Castle, you know, as if the Axis powers had won World War II, what that actual reality looks like, he says he saw it and it happened and it's existing out there somewhere in the many worlds theory, which is wild to me. But then back to what I was saying there with the duality of creation, that was his actual one of his main concepts when he wrote his books and did his lectures. But also John C. Lilly came up with a similar fact, or, you know, theory. Let's not call it facts because I don't really know. Like I said, I'm not an expert. But so the solid state intelligence was a malevolent entity that was trying to keep us from this information, this Akashic record, this type of stuff, right? Cultural resonance, all the things. But he also, regarding, we'll get to synchronicities in a second here because this wraps it all up. But he also had this theory about something called the ECCO. Now, this stands for the Earth Coincidence Control Office. Okay, very much like we've talked about this in the past as well on Troubled Minds. But what is it? Loki from the Marvel Universe in the Time Variance Authority, or from Philip K. Dick and what is it? The movie? What's it called? It had Matt Damon in it. There was a.
It's the Adjustment Bureau, and I think in the books he calls it Valis.
Valis. Yeah, that's Philip K. Dick. The Adjustment Bureau. That's the one I'm thinking of. So it was very similar to ECCO, which was two different people, but came up with similar ideas. Sorry, anything else to add there?
No, I was just jumping in with the Adjustment Bureau.
Okay. Yeah, Adjustment Bureau. Yeah, good stuff. Okay, but the wild part is this. Is he had this the same thing, the same idea, the Earth Coincidence Control Office. Okay. And so that is a benevolent guiding intelligence that operates behind the senses of reality. It appears to coordinate events and synchronicities to lead individuals toward personal growth, understanding, or enlightenment. And of course, enlightenment would be that space of piercing the veil, of being able to bring information back to the material world, the material realm, which on the other hand, the solid state intelligence is doing the opposite. It's drawing power from us, very matrix-like, and instead trying to stop that enlightenment from happening. Now, is that stuff all true? I don't know, right? Like, how would you ever be able to put your finger on that? I don't really know, but the theories to me resonate metaphorically, allegorically, to what we're talking about, to that substrate of reality. Now, regarding the ECCO and the synchronicities, now there's an old theory that goes something like this. If you are on the right path, doing what you're supposed to be doing, where you're supposed to be doing it, the universe will answer. The universe will give you breadcrumbs and clues and things like this in the form of synchronicities. And this is Carl Jung brought this up, that the more you sort of press and grow and become who you're supposed to become, and whatever that means, that's through your own human lens. I'm not sure there's like one answer to that. I think there's many possibilities. The observer effect, the collapse of the wave function, all this stuff plays, right? Like you decide, it's your human prism. But if that resonates in the moment with your direction, then the universe answers back with synchronicities. And they become, of course, they accelerate and they become more and more relevant to what you're doing, and you notice them more. And suddenly it's almost as if the universe is winking back. And that's the bizarre part. And also in the same sense, now back to remote viewing as part of this, is that the universe winking back is doing this through remote viewing synchronicities in some capacity as well. Because to me, when you're seeing this stuff, and you're given options of, as we were talking about earlier, I'm not an expert in this, but the different ways to kind of see the information, gain those downloads. With practice, of course, comes more clarity, but also maybe a synchronistic clarity that you are seeing things you're supposed to be seeing, and maybe you see those things more clearly in the moment. Just another theory on top of a theory. But I don't really know. This type of stuff absolutely boggles my mind, and I love all of it. And that's why I talk about this stuff and think about it, because there's a lot of ways to look at it. Again, the paranormal stuff, the veil, the Akashic record, the old esoteric idea, again, back to the assimilation theory and the matrix green curtain of code. there's a lot of this, and how much we understand and how much of this kind of comes through to us in a moment is really what this is all about, in my opinion, kind of being able to bring information back to this space. Now, regarding, I had a question and an idea here, and I'm just about done. I got tons of stuff I can get into, and I can talk forever, as you can tell. But I wanted to ask, kind of throw this out to the panel, and John as well. There was a question I had for him. Is that, do you guys find that when you are together, let's say in a training class, remote viewing physically together, that there's maybe interference between people remote viewing, or do you think it's like an amplification effect, or is it siloed where it doesn't really doesn't crisscross or affect each other or something like that? Or for instance, let's say there was a particularly powerful remote viewer, say Ingo Swann or somebody, one of the best ever type of thing, shows up to one of those things. Would it boost the group? Would he sort of hog up all the juice? I don't know. Because I do know we do a lot of this stuff by ourselves individually, the internet, sort of the protocols, we learn these things and we practice them individually. But when we get together, is there some sort of like latent resonance that kind of builds with people doing the same thing in the same space? And that's my question. That's why I wanted to ask John, and I'll leave it to you guys beyond that, unless you have anything for me. But fire stuff. I appreciate you having me on, Sasha and David, and a pleasure meeting all the rest of you guys as well. But I'm just chilling. But that's my question for kind of the panel, whoever's interested in that idea.
Thank you, Michael. You've brought up so many things. I have so many questions and comments for you. But first, let's let John respond. John, you're muted. Oh, I can unmute you here. There you go.
Oh, wait, there we go. Okay. In my experience, I've found that in the classes and when you have conferences and things like that, and you get together with other remote viewers, I found that it is a force enhancer, if you will. I think the more remote viewers that are involved in a project, the better off you're going to be. I think it's how would you call it? A force magister, if you will. But yeah, I think that, and you have to remember too, is that remote viewing was never designed to be an individual effort. It was designed to be a cooperative effort. It's not a solo endeavor. It's a process, not an event. That's the problem that a lot of people have. They say they're remote viewers, and they're not. They have had personal experiences where they have had some sort of psychic individual action happen. But that's not remote viewing. Remote viewing is a process. It involves a methodology, it involves a protocol. And when you get a number of individuals together, as I've seen in conferences and in classes, you can have spectacular results because of I believe, a non-linear action happens.
So my intuition was correct. I figured it might have something to play when you get a bunch of people together kind of working on the same thing. Yeah, just an idea, but I can see all of those things happening, cross interference with those patterns, or maybe sort of a booster effect when you get together like that. But it makes sense either way to me. How about with a particularly gifted remote viewer? Do they tend to add an additional boost, or maybe gobble up the juice in the room?
Well, we've seen, so in our monthly live stream.
It's funny because I used to think, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I used to think that that I didn't have any talent at all. It wasn't until I took Dave Morehouse's classes that I realized that I was able to do operational work. The people in my classes, for the most part, were truly gifted. And it always appeared that because of so many gifted people involved, we got spectacular results. Now, I will point out that there were occasions where there was some disharmony in the group, and that did affect the viewing. So the viewers, it depends all about whether or not you have a coherent group or you have groups that are on divergent interests.
You know, I think in the past I might have said, well, the group effects are clear, obvious. There's an enhancement effect where you have, especially with groups that work together again and again and again, that coherency kind of just increases. And it's incredible to see. And if you look through our live streams, our monthly live streams, you can see the group progressing. You can see as the regular participants keep coming back every month, that it's incredible to see the matching up of the data. And I think if you had asked me a year ago whether a dominant remote viewer can take the whole group off target, I think it can happen for some groups, yes. But what I'm realizing more and more is often what people consider off target is just data that's not properly analyzed, that's not properly understood. It's a metaphor that's misinterpreted for literal data. And so, or the data stream is trying to communicate something that is maybe adjacent to the target, but really important, that it kind of wants to get out there and nobody's listening. And so we have seen, you know, I think the dominant consciousness, if other people are relying on the group effect, then they can follow a dominant remote viewer. And if that dominant remote viewer is really good, then that can really enhance everybody's performance or their data. But if that dominant remote viewer is having a bad day and they're going off target, or they're going off into something that's more interesting to them, then you'll see the whole group follow the flock. But as an individual remote viewer, especially because I've worked targets with David and he's so strong and he has this huge coherence. And when he tasks me with a target, sometimes, like as soon as I start writing the target ID, the code, I know it's one of David's targets because it's just so shiny and bright. It's nearly blinding. And so when you have someone like that in a group, as an individual remote viewer, I think you have to be able to establish your domain within consciousness. And I always do that for myself, because even though it might be easier to say, I'm just going to borrow someone else's signal line, I'm just going to kind of tap into their access to the data, I think that's not the right way of doing it, because you will get more coherence with their data. But if you'll basically mirror their session, which doesn't provide new data, right? And so I find that, again, what John was saying about intent, remote viewing is intent driven. So I always have my intent to be, I want my own access to the data. I'm going to the data stream and I'm getting from it what I will be happy to get from it, what I will think is important data, right? Right. And so I think, or what the data stream and I have this relationship that I've developed with it. And so I want it to give me what it and I will think is good. And one of the other things, you talked about synchronicities. There's something happening where the sessions that I work, that David works, and then separately from that, the live stream people, the regular live streams work. It doesn't matter that I choose the targets independently, that I try not to be biased by the previous month's target. It doesn't matter how hard I try to insulate each month's target. I am noticing that when I take a step back and I look from a broader perspective, I'm starting to see a narrative. I'm starting to see a story. There are these synchronicities in the data, in the patterns. And that's why I was interested, Michael, in having you talk about John Lilly, because he's talking about the solid state intelligence, and he's talking about the ECCO. And I have I have been talking about the data stream, and I think that kind of maps on, but in a more benevolent way, but that's arguable, I guess, with the solid state intelligence. But the synchronicities that occur, so with the sessions Dave and I have worked, it's shocking to see that there does seem to be an underlying pattern that we're uncovering. And I feel like in 10 years, we'll be able to, it's going to take its full form. We'll be able to see what the data stream has been communicating to us through all these complex sessions. David, did you want to say a few words about that as well?
Well, I mean, I'll back up exactly what she says. I've seen the same patterns. You see coherency across dissimilar targets and there's communication. So the information is always multi-layered, and it depends on whether you're able to interpret the information and what level you can see it on. In terms of some of the stuff you had mentioned, because there was kind of a lot of things, and I'm trying to make sure I say something before I forget it, right? Because there's a lot of it's like trying to hold on to the information. A lot of first off, thank you for joining us. I've not met you personally, and I just want to say, I appreciate you being here, Michael. Before I continue with my observations, but a lot of the information that you communicated is, from my perspective, it is about perspective. So in any of those scenarios, depending on what model or perspective you choose, which I see as the same word, you choose to view a given situation, it can look like both can be correct, but they look like opposite stuff, right? Like evil, good. It's like, no, it's actually the same thing, but it depends on what perspective you're actually trying to understand it from. And then in terms of synchronicities, because there were some things that you questions or things you had talked about, are the synchronicities, do they occur simply because your awareness or your point of focus is on a particular path, so therefore the synchronicities provide themselves? So is it a question of the universe responding to you, or is it simply because that's where your mindset's at and your awareness has to be high enough that you actually catch the synchronicity? So does it have nothing to do with being on the right path? It's just where your actual mind is at. It's just a question, right, in my mind. In terms of personal synchronicities, on the universe meeting you halfway and communicating information, you're on the right path, that concept. An example that I have is with remote viewing. Is like I've been working on sports betting numbers, getting them direct, getting numbers precisely as I can. And it takes a certain level of awareness. Like when this happens, it's real information because you're absolutely not looking for it. That's the thing that's crazy about it. It's like, I'm not looking for it. Like you almost like miss it. And then when you see it, you're like, huh? And then you find out that was correct information. You're like, wow. And so that like, if you're actually looking for it, usually it's not correct, the synchronicity. So, with sports betting, I'm not a sports guy. I don't care about sports. I don't play sports. I occasionally watch a game or something. I'm just saying, like, it's not really my field of interest. But I'm doing the remote viewing, right? And I go out into the world and I'm driving around, and here's a sticker for one of the teams that I've been working on for that day. Now, normally I don't ever look at sports stickers or anything like that, but it's like, there's one of the teams, right? It ended up being correct. That was the winner for the day. And that happened like 2 or 3 times. And so I'm saying like 100% of the time that was accurate. Now I know everything's a 50-50. I'm an engineer. I'd have to have like a big sample set to say that was legit, right? But I'm saying like, interesting. Now the other one was different and I almost didn't catch it. I get up in the morning. So this is before I do my data for the teams. I don't even know what the teams are going to be. Like, I don't even know what they are that day, right? I get up in the morning and I see a meme on Facebook, and it has this, and I forget what the meme is, but it was like, it made no sense to me. It was like it had a wizard in like a high-tech environment, and it was some kind of joke. And I'm like, that is like the worst way to create a meme. And the wizard just like, it bugged me. And so then I do the teams, and one of the teams is the Wizards. And I remembered, oh, wait a minute, I had a wizard in my memory, came up in my awareness earlier in the day. What was that? And it bugged me. Oh yeah, it was that meme. That ended up being the winning team. So, how much of it is your awareness? How much of it is it's just the thing that you're focused on? How much of it is actual communication from a source? These are all great questions.
Yeah, real quick on the great point on the are we on the right path sort of thing. That's Carl Jung actually, so that's not me. So that's sort of one of the things he posited as part of it. And I don't know the answer to that. I think it might be, once again, back to the duality of that creation bit. It's probably both things, as you said, like focused and in the moment. Maybe you do pick up on more of this stuff, and it is a reward for being focused and in the moment because it's where we're supposed to be if we're doing things correctly. So again, that's the fascinating part to me is a lot of this information comes through, but are we noticing? And I don't really know. One last thing, and then all the rest, I'm going to hang out with you guys, but I'm going to shut my mouth because I talk way too much. But so one final thing regarding this and sort of the good and evil aspect of it. I'm not sure how that plays. Again, you can look at good and evil bundled, like yin and yang, like you described, sort of the duality and the rest of that stuff. So looking at both of those dichotomies is like, okay, that's cool, but is it possible to go too far, to gain too much information from beyond? And there are some theories that suggest it's the truth. And so one, I wanted to point out, I don't know if you guys heard of this, it's called Chapel Perilous. And you guys ever heard of this before?
No.
Okay, so just real quick, it originates from Arthurian legend, notably appearing in Sir Thomas Malory's Le Morte d'Arthur. That's 1485. And in this narrative, Sir Lancelot encounters the Chapel Perilous, a foreboding place where the sorceress Heloise attempts to seduce him, ultimately without success. Beyond its literary roots, Chapel Perilous has been adopted metaphorically to describe a psychological state of profound uncertainty. Writer Robert Anton Wilson, in his 1977 book Cosmic Trigger, uses the term to depict a phrase where individuals cannot discern whether their experiences result from external supernatural influences or their own psyche. Wilson suggests that traversing this state leads to one to emerge either paranoid or agnostic with no alternative outcome. And when you come to absolutes, it drives me nuts. So clearly I'm not on board with that. There's always going to be shades of gray. But the concept also appears in modern psychology and consciousness studies. And Taro Ali, in his 1986 work, Angel Tech, A Modern Shaman's Guide to Reality Selection, refers to Chapel Perilous as a rite of passage encountered when transitioning between different levels of consciousness. So in essence, the Chapel Perilous itself symbolizes a critical juncture in both myth and mind, a perilous passage that challenges one's perceptions and beliefs, demanding courage and insight to navigate, which is basically going to be a layer, a block, the challenging aspect of moving from one space to another, whatever that looks like, whatever that motion is, and can be damaging, can be fraught with peril, as said. So just leave it at that as part of this, but just to kind of wrap up the good part and the bad part and consider how this looks. But once again, I'm going to hang out with you guys. Thanks for having me. Again, Sasha, you're the best. David, a pleasure to meet you, and everybody else here. Great stuff.
Thank you so much. That was fascinating. I do want to come back around to that after Chris's presentation, because I do want to talk more about the planned synchronicities that John Lilly was theorizing about. I think that idea is so profound, and it does seem to kind of map onto some of our experiences. So that would be great. And I just wanted to share screen really quickly before we move to Chris's presentation. So Chris, if you're nearly ready, I'm just going to share some of Troubled Minds information. So let me put that up if I can. It's always a struggle. Here we go. Sharing screen. There we go. That should work. Let me know if you can see that. Yes, okay. So here's the troubledminds.net is the main site where you can find information here, where you can find the shows, and they're I think a couple times a week now at the moment, and you can listen live here as well. They do have a Discord group as well, and then here, oh, there we go. The Isolated Consciousness, the Collision of Mind. Here is a post that Michael has written about Dr. John Lilly. Yeah, I think it's worth reading. I think for people interested in remote viewing, in the synchronicities that occur as you are a remote viewer, as you become better and better at it, there's a lot of information there. And also just finding his YouTube channel and going to his episode on that topic, or Rumble or Rockfin, whatever is easiest for people. And so, yeah. Okay, and so then now, so yeah, we'll come back to this, and John as well. We'll come back to a broader conversation about all our presentations. But first, we're going to have Chris, our final presenter of the afternoon, talking to us about his website. So Chris, take it away. Or should I do an introduction? I'll let you introduce yourself.
Yep. Hey everyone, so I'm Chris, also known as Chilio. So I've been a remote viewer for the past 4 years-ish. I am not a programmer, I'm an architect, but I do program for fun. And I've been starting to program stuff for my own use. And then I decided to put it on my website, where I also post some of my sessions and some of the videos of my sessions. And I thought that it would be good for the community to use those tools, because I originally built them for myself, but I decided to just put them on my website. And the whole idea is to have fun, because sometimes remote viewing can be long and tedious. So there are different tools that I'm going to show to you today. Some are fun, some are a bit more tedious, some are for training. But the whole idea is to just give something for training purposes and to have a bit of fun, and maybe to also bring awareness to the community that this exists and that you can use it for free if you would wish to. And also I will start with this. So let me share my screen. Can you see the website?
Yes.
Yes. So this is my website. It's called myrvtoolbox.com. And so on this website, I have my RV adventures with my videos that you can go check if you want to. But that's not what I'm here to talk about today. So I'm going to talk about my RV tools. But before I go to the RV tools, on the main page, you have this button, any suggestions. And so I encourage you, if you have an idea or a creative idea of a small tool about remote viewing for fun, for training, anything independent of methodology, don't hesitate to just fill in the form and send me a message. And if I have time, I will develop it and add it to the tool set. I originally built the tool set, and I've been working on a lot of other stuff recently, but I'm really happy to continue to build on top of this, and maybe this can become a big repository of a lot of cool tools. So I'm going to present to you some of the tools. I'm not going to go into too much detail. I'll try to keep it short and sweet. So the first one, it's a personal ARV session. I guess most people know what ARV is. For those who don't, I will give you a very brief description of what that is without going into the detail, but ARV stands for Associative Remote Viewing. The idea is to have a binary outcome where you would associate one of the targets. You would select two targets and you would associate each one to an outcome, a binary outcome. And the idea is that you view the target in the future. And so this creates a time loop where you perceive the target in the future. And this, in theory, should give you the correct binary option. So this first tool is just simply an ARV tool. So the most common use case we could find would be, will team A or B win? And you can use that for decisions. Should I go left? Should I go right? Should I take the job? Shouldn't I take the job? Of course, you need to think about other aspects and not base all of your decisions based on remote viewing only, but I guess I'm not the one who is supposed to tell you this. So here you would put the two different outcomes. So I want to go left, I want to go right. Team A or Team B will win. You start your session. You scribble your quick session. In theory, you would have the two photographs in envelopes, and you would only be revealed the correct one afterwards. Of course, this is difficult to do on a website. So here I changed and I tweaked this a bit. So you can take a quick peek at each target without seeing it. So when you put your cursor on it, you see that the first one, the main gestalt, is water. There's a number that's associated with it. There's an emotion and there's a color. So you can try to also view these, not only the picture. The other one, the main gestalt, is air. Number is 5. There is the emotion of joy and the color is blue. So in theory, now with the main gestalt being air or water, you should be able to guess or at least match your quick session to one of these. If you really want to, you can reveal the feedback. But let's say I would have drawn something related to water. I would select image 1. And then I would predict the outcome, and it would automatically tell me what the outcome is. So the outcome for my prediction would be Team A, and this is the feedback for the target. So it's not perfect. It's just for fun. Like I said, in theory, it's something that you should only get feedback for in the future, and you should never be exposed to the second picture, actually. But like I said, this one is really for fun. Let's move on then to the big 3 tools. So I played a bit with the pick tree lottery, and I decided to try to make some tools around it. So the three first tools, they all work kind of in the same way. So we'll go faster for those. But so here you would make a prediction, and the idea is that you iterate 3 times on the same concept. You have 10 boxes here. There are numbers between those boxes, but you don't know what's the number. But you have the same idea. You have a main gestalt, you have other gestalts, you have temperatures, you have textures, you have dimensions, smells, taste. So basically here you would do some quick scribbles, and you go through all of these, and you select the one that matches the most to the small scribble session you did for the first number. You click continue, you do the same for a second one. Here I would say it was mainly bio, it was mushy, I sense smells of soap. Up, you do the same for the third one, and this gives you your prediction for the pick tree lottery. Now this is your prediction, you can buy your ticket and hope for the best. So 559 is your prediction. Then if you respect the theory behind remote viewing, that was your prediction, but you're supposed to get feedback. So if you get the lottery results this evening, and it was not 559, but 123, let's say, you would come here and you would say, the feedback was 123. Show me the feedback of what I was supposed to see. And these are the pictures that you were supposed to see. And if you pay close attention, you can find that 1, 2, 3 is linked to the picture. So in the first one, it looks like a 1. In the second one, it looks like a 2. In the third one, it doesn't look like a 3, but it's the concept of 3 is a lucky charm. So that's the idea behind this. Then I added something related to dowsing. So you just have like a table of pick 3, of all the possibilities that exist for the pick 3 lottery. And if you douse, or if you want to feel, you can sort of say, I feel that it's in this spot that tonight's pick 3 numbers will be. You reveal this and you have the possibilities here. And everything is random, so it really works with the idea of dowsing. So let me go back to the tools. And this last one is also a bit related to what we've seen, but this is something that's linked to magicinthenoise. So in one of their videos, Sasha and David talked about the error correcting protocol, which is kind of the same approach as ARV in some way, but very quick. And the idea is to, on one side, have a target with high to mid target contact, and the other one low to no target contact. And so the idea is that during your session, you could pick one of the subjects that you are dealing with and do a very quick 3-minute session on this. And then the same ideas for an ARV session like we saw earlier. You would do your quick session, and then you can take a peek. What's the main gestalt? Land, number, emotion, color. And the other one is man-made. So if in your very quick session, you would have seen a vast land with only natural stuff and nothing man-made, you could deduct that what you're looking at in your session at the moment is high to mid target contact. And so you can consider it as good target contact and thus good data. And here you always have the button to reveal the feedback. And if you want to continue, you refresh and you always have a new target ID number that comes at the top. Then something a bit more fun, an ARV game. So here, same concept always, but here you have 6 levels. So you start at the first level and you have kind of a small story that comes here. And each time you need to get the correct answer. So in the first level, you find 2 doors. One that leads to the basement and the other one to the library. You need to do your quick ARV session on what's the correct door. These are your quick peeks. You can reveal both of the targets if you want. And then you can decide which one is the best one and you can choose it. And if you lose, it's game over. Let's see. Yeah, if you're correct, you go to the next level. There are 6 levels, so if you can go to the 6th level, you won the game. Then we have an ideogram game. So this is more for the CRV and TRV and TDRV folks. So basically, there are tools out there where you can just practice your ideograms, like water, land, but it's very boring. And so I decided to do something a bit different, and it's just basically the same, but more in a game, and then you get like scores at the end. So you would start it. You just do your ideogram. Let's say it was man-made, it was wrong. Then it goes to the next one, air, it was wrong. You go to the next one, and I'm not going to go because you have 20 of those. But at the end, it tells you how many you got right versus how many you got wrong. What's your ratio, and how do you score against chance? So that's cool. If you use ideograms, it's a cool tool to train and to keep scores and see if you can consistently increase and be above chance. Then the audio targets I really like. When I was searching for targets in target pools, it was always the same. So always like just a picture, not a lot of stuff happening in the background. And then I thought, maybe I can task an audio target. So it's not the picture, it's something that's being said, or it's a song. So here you can just quickly try to see how you can use remote viewing to kind of get an audio target. So let's make one. So front loading, you can say yes or no. There are only songs, I can already tell you that. So the front loading doesn't matter because it will tell you that it's a song. My idea was to incorporate other sounds, but I didn't add more target for the moment. But so here you have your target ID number. So the idea is that you do your remote viewing session in the same way as you usually do, but try to pay attention to what you hear, what's the groove, maybe try to sketch the artist, try to sketch the dance moves, try to sketch what the music inspires. And then at the end, you can reveal the feedback. And here you get a music with an artist, the temporal context if you want to work around with dates, where it's popular. And here is the tasking. So the viewer is to describe the target song. So the groove of the song, to try to hum it, the style of the song, some lyrics, maybe what's the story behind the song. You can get data around that, data on the artist, or even like the outfits, if it stands out, the artwork on the album or on the single. So very simple, but to me, this is a really cool one because it's really different from the usual stuff. So it's always nice to do something a bit different. The next one, I like a lot. I'm not very good with visuals, but the idea behind this one is to force visuals in the sense of making an afterburn image on your eyelids. And then the purpose is to train to try to summon it back. And I've done that with candles in the beginning, and it was really nice. If you stare at the candle for 30 seconds to 1 minute, and then you close your eyes, you continue to see that light, and then it changes color, it becomes red and then blue, and then it disappears. But if you try to bring it back, sometimes it comes back. And the idea is the same here. You would start with, so I foresaw numbers, letters, shapes, decisions, 3-letter words and 5-letter words. But after seeing the presentation of David, I'm thinking maybe I should try to add pictures that are like in negatives that would reflect well in an after image. So I may try to look around that. And so the idea here, like I said, is to train to see numbers or letters or whatever. And I can show how it would work. So you would stare at this for 30 seconds to 1 minute. You can try it afterwards. It goes really fast. So if you really stare at it, really you stare at the whole core of it for 30 seconds to 1 minute. Then you close your eyes. You will see it come as an afterburn image. And slowly it will fade away, and you will see it in the reverse. So in this particular case, you will see it as white on a dark. So the tree will be white, and the background will be black in the after image. The idea is to try, when it fades away, to bring it back and make it come back. And it works. And the idea is really to train yourself to do that so much that at some point, even without looking at this, you can say, let me visualize and summon a 3 and be able to visualize that. So that was the whole purpose behind that, was to try to remote view numbers. But now I do realize that it could be very interesting to do the same with like basic gestalts or of pictures. So I may try to investigate into that. And so in the same idea, you would have decisions. No, you can visualize that for 1 minute. You will see it as an afterburn image, and then you can try to summon that. And if you work with that, there is yes, no, maybe. You can try to incorporate that in your remote viewing sessions. If you're trying to ask a not binary, but 3-way question. And if you manage to summon those easily, it could be something you could integrate. So I just tried to integrate a bunch of stuff here. And I also have some shapes here. So for example, an open triangle. I don't think you hear it, but when you open it, there is a voice that speaks it. So here it said open triangle. And in the previous it said 3, etc. If you click on the space bar, it goes to the next one. So you can also use this with a blindfold on and just have headphones, and you can try to perceive it before or perceive it when it's already there. So it's a cool tool. You can also just use it not with the afterburn idea, but just to like get random numbers come and just try with direct perception, whichever way you do it, to perceive numbers or letters. Then the last one is something that comes from one of the ways that David came up with on finding numbers and viewing numbers. So the whole idea of what David suggests here is that using the American Sign Language is a good way to get numbers visually in remote viewing, because it's something that already exists out there and that is imprinted sorry, in the collective consciousness. So don't hesitate to interrupt me, David, if I'm saying something wrong. But that's the basic idea behind this. And the idea behind this component is just to train using this idea. So you would select the number of rounds that you would want to do, 3, 5, or 10. And so if you select 3, you start. Here you have 10 numbers from 0 to 9. The idea, if you're following the methodology of David, is that you close your eyes, you summon a visual on the American Sign Language, and you select the number that you got. So here I will randomly select 3. It was wrong. The correct number was 0. So you get direct feedback. Then we selected 3 rounds. So let's continue. I'll just do things like this, up. So I got 3 wrong. That's not great. And so I got 0 correct out of 3. And so you get the percentage of correctness. So this tool is pretty good if you're using that method. And if you want to track how many accurate numbers you manage to get. So if you start with like 10 rounds and you see that progressively over the course of days and weeks, instead of having always like 3 correct, you start to have 4, 5 consistently, 5, 6 consistently, then you can see that you're making progress. And in my opinion, it's a really cool tool to train yourself using that method. So that's pretty much it. I hope it made sense and I didn't rush too much into it. But so these are the 4 tools that I have now. Like I said, I'm really doing this to have a fun and practical, different approach to remote viewing for the community. It's all free. So like I said in the beginning, don't hesitate to go to my website and add any suggestions if there is some tool that you would think of that you think would bring value here. So that's it.
That was fantastic. Thank you so much, Chris. That was brilliant. It's an amazing website. Before I let the others say, I just wanted to say hello to everyone in chat. We have been keeping track of your chats. David and I are passing back and forth between who's replying. But I wanted to say a special hello to members of our regular participants of our monthly live streams. Both John Dixon and Cody are in chat, and they both were making comments about your system, Chris, saying, you know, the audio target, very interesting, really fascinating, very novel. It's nice to see that new innovation in the remote viewing community because it's very much needed. So great job on that. And also, Michael Strange has brought a lot of his audience members from Troubled Minds are in our chat. So I wanted to say hello to them because sometimes I chat with them in Rumble. So hi, guys. We appreciate you being here as well. And so, yeah, you're getting really good positive feedback in the chat, Chris. And David, did you want to say something about this as well?
Well, I mean, you know, Chris, you've got a nice looking site. So you put together the information in a way that's visually nice. You've got it very coherent, concise, and you've got a lot of variety and innovation as well, right, into the way that you've set it up. So, and the fact that it's free, and that you're willing to take suggestions on other tools to develop. It's just a great job, amazing. The community, the remote viewing community is not typically, from my experience, been known to, you know, I look at everything as like a win-win, like try to help each other, lift each other up, right, kind of thing. And the community is not so much like that in general. So I'm just saying, like, I want to express that to you because I think it's important. And we are seeing that reflected in the chat as well. So, yeah, thanks. Good job. That's awesome.
Yeah. Does anyone else have anything to say to Chris? Or questions?
Yeah, just real quick for Chris, does it save this in a database? Is it able to take long-term information from people who use the website and then be able to kind of trace it back versus chance? Is that implemented?
No, the only thing that is saved in the database is the ARV one. All the rest is purely on the spot.
Okay, cool. So I was just curious if there was a way to long-term test that versus chance and see if there's, you know, a particular user, say, or a particular day where maybe, I don't know, Tuesdays at 3 o'clock, like suddenly something spins off and now everybody's right for some reason. You know what I mean? That'd be amazing.
Yeah, we'll have to check which of the tools would be a good match for this, but that's definitely something I can add, where people are told that the data is saved and it will be used for statistical perspective and research. So definitely that's something that could be incorporated.
Yeah.
I think yeah, go ahead, Michael.
I was going to say, yeah, I do know that some websites do that, where they kind of pool remote viewing resources and so on. And yeah, I think there's also can be like some ethical things with that, like, you know, Chris kind of spoke to as well, because I think sometimes they use that data for like more covert targets and like things like that to like do their own like speculation and investments and things like that. So they're kind of like doing something for free, but kind of like crowdsourcing for other purposes, sort of like how, like, you know, Facebook uses information for advertising, so on. They can use it for other kind of data collection.
Yep. I can assure you that I don't do that, but that's only my word. So like I said, the only thing that is saved is whatever you put in the first component. But I don't do anything with that. It's just that it's the first component I actually had built, and I wanted to keep the data for myself. So that's why it is there. There's a lot of German people who put stuff in there. So I do check what people do, but I don't use it for any purpose.
And here, John Dixon is saying in chat that he's thinking that your ideas to test or practice in these unique ways would have been very helpful in the SRI labs in the beginning rounds of ESP research. And I think that's really, you know, I think there's a lot of value in having these kinds of tools for free, low pressure. It's not being recorded, and so people can go and just explore and experiment and train themselves. And I think in terms of just becoming more comfortable with putting your psi ability to the test, so that if you are in more formal, I don't know, processes, you're used to it. You know, you're not as nervous about it. So, Chris, I think you did. I agree with everyone in chat. It's an amazing website, amazing tools. They look good. They're easy to use. They're straightforward, but they actually do work. And so thank you so much for presenting these. Thank you so much for opening them up for free to the community. I'm just excited to see where it goes, where your website goes, because I think as well, kind of incorporating the feedback from people who are using it, that's great. And I was happy to see David's phase 1 number system make its way into that. That was really nice to see.
Yeah, as you know, I also have a few other projects that are bigger, but while building them, I realized that I cannot do all of this for free and pay the hosting and the backend for free. So in the end, I will be paying like 800 euros per per month to put something for free online. So my website here, that's simple, but for the other bigger stuff, I cannot continue and just have thousands of users with them. But I'll see what I can do to make those apps free or at least very inexpensive if I continue on those. But I think there's a lack of database management and tools for RV. There's a lot of use cases.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. Yes. And, I think people are, some of the tools being free, and then some of the more complex systems that you have on your website, charging for access for those that do a little bit more. I think that makes sense as well. And people like Michael was saying, people are paying for apps where, oh, test your RV. What they don't know is that behind the scenes, that data is being collated and it's used to predict stock market performance. And the people who have access to the data are using that for their own financial gain. And so I think that I think having a bit more transparency. I would rather people just charge up front than pretend it's free, but then they're using, or like Michael, like you were saying, or it's mass target. So you think you're doing one thing, they're collecting your data, but really maybe they're trying to find where the Russian troops located in Ukraine along the border next week on Wednesday. And they're pretending, oh, you're just remote viewing where the cactus is in the landscape. But no, that's not actually right. And so those are things to be aware of. And so
Yeah.
now kind of open it up for a broader discussion. So I was talking about analysis. David talked about visuals. Michael, you talked about synchronicities. John Lilly, the data stream or SSI, and Echo. The Echo, tell me again what it stands for, because I'm just blanking.
You and me both. I got it here somewhere. Hold on. I got all my notes. It's called the Earth Coincidence Control Office.
That's the one. Yeah, so it is like in the Adjustment Bureau. It is like an organization that plans synchronicities and manages events so that certain strategic occurrences or events happen. And so it says, okay, we need this to happen. And so then a resonance wave of probability kind of resonates outwards from that event, and it impacts everyone's lives and consciousness in ways that you find yourself making a choice based on that resonance. This path feels a bit easier. And so you go down that path, and that takes you to that synchronicity. And so I really think that we could talk about it for 4 hours. I would like to talk about it for 4 hours, but maybe not today here. And then John Herlosky was talking about illuminating a target in consciousness such that other remote viewers can see that illumination. And to the extreme of having another remote viewer see you there illuminating the target. And so I think that that's really fascinating as well. And so I'm just opening the floor up. Questions, comments, discussion. We're also going to be introducing any questions that come up or ideas that come in from chat. But this is the time to have a conversation with these people. And also, before we start that, I want to say this has been fascinating for me. I hope it's been fun for everyone else as well. It's so rare to find people who are interested in these topics, willing to talk about them, and knowledgeable. And so it's just it just feels so good to have these kinds of conversations, these kinds of circles. And I really do think we should do this again, minus the technical difficulties at the beginning, so that we're maybe more on schedule. But I definitely think that we should do this on a more regular basis, because even just the talks that we had today, I wouldn't mind follow-ups on these exact topics in 6 months, in addition to new topics and new ideas. And so people in chat, if that sounds good, or in the comments section, let us know if you would be up for that. But I definitely would be. And so, so with that, anyone else who wants to say or start a question, or David from chat, anything, go ahead. The pressure's on, but we need someone else's voice, not just my same monotonous voice. Go ahead, Michael Strange. Tell us what you're thinking.
No, I was going to say I talk too much. Real quick, too, as just a final addendum to what I was saying there as part of this, which is pretty wild. So Nick Bostrom just came out with a paper, and he's an AI researcher. Maybe you guys are familiar with the guy. But so his most recent paper talks about a cosmic host, the concept of a cosmic host, which is basically like greater than God, like sort of the monad situation, but it's based on like an AI situation. And so the concept is this. So it's the cosmic host could consist of various advanced entities such as super intelligent AIs, extraterrestrial civilizations with galaxy scale technology, and even entities that might be considered divine or simulator-like from our perspective. And the reason I bring that up is because it wraps all of that back up into these theories that there's something else out there sending information to us that's beyond our scope of even understanding. And those breadcrumbs, those synchronicities, those nuggets are exactly lined up so we do see them or we don't. And again, it depends on that observer effect of us and who we are. But just one final concept is that I recognize it as just before we started today, and I wasn't sure if I had time to wrap that in, but there's a lot kind of going on with this. And back to the substrate of reality, as I was saying, is the most interesting part of this. But a lot of folks down there didn't say a lot, so I'm going to shut my mouth and you guys go right ahead. Thanks again for bearing with me.
Seems like a really cool paper that Nick wrote, so I'll have to check it out.
Cosmic host.
Claudia, I've unmuted you.
Well, I just wanted to say to Chris that I'm surely going to check it out and work on your website. I was already planning that for months, but now I've seen it, and yeah, great. I like that. Thanks.
No props.
Patrick, what about you? You've been kind of quiet.
Yeah, I've been all night. I really enjoyed the lectures, by the way. Very interesting. Very informative.
And you'll have to, it's a shame that the presentation from Hilde, that didn't work out. But we'll do that one next time with your assistance, of course.
Sure.
That's the opportunity to make another mini conference.
Exactly.
Sorry.
Yeah. And so, John, I was going to ask you a question, but you are currently, I think, in a frozen state. So we'll wait until you're unfrozen. But I really think, I hope people can see the links in these topics that we're talking about. You know, Michael is talking about the substrate of our reality, and this is something that David and I have talked about as well in our videos, I think. And if you're in my Facebook, you'll see me ranting about that as well. But it is this idea that we are living in a reality that's a lot more complex, and we have access to it in ways that people don't like to think about. You know, the idea that synchronicities can be planned, the ideas that a remote viewer can look into the future, that time is somehow irrelevant to remote viewing, and to some extent so is privacy. These are things that scare people, and I don't think that they should. There's also a lot of disinformation. We do have the ability to collect incredible amounts of knowledge, and there are some groups that, you know, they'd rather keep their secrets, and so we present a bit of a threat to them as we get better with our skills. And so I think it is important to build community, to support each other, to share these ideas, to share these innovations, because that's how we move forward. We can't keep waiting for the celebrity gurus in the community to kind of take us to the next place, because they're not. We are, as individuals, you are. And so I think it's that self-empowerment. And so that's what I find exciting. And that's what David and I are doing. You know, Magic in the Noise, it's not some kind of a funded, organized, structured group. It's just David and I trying our best to advance the remote viewing, advance what we're able to do, advance what the community is able to do. We share the research, we share results. And our journey of discovery, I guess. And there's nothing stopping others from doing the same. Chris, you have a YouTube channel as well, Chill Leo. where you share your remote viewing results. And again, I encourage people to check that out. I think it's fun and fascinating. And like I said, Michael Strange, Troubled Minds, you guys check that out, because the information, and I have to say, I am sensitive to frequencies. And so sometimes I'd rather read a podcast rather than listen to it, or I'd rather read about the subject. And that's the one thing that I really appreciate with Troubled Minds, is that you have those written show topic kind of blog essays. And I love those, the ideas that it triggers in me. Sometimes poor David has to put up with me coming and getting all excited. Oh my goodness, I was just reading this and I need to talk about it and I missed the live show. So we're going to talk about it, you and I. And so it's really fun. Yeah. Go ahead, Michael.
Thank you for checking it out. Yeah, that's the point. And you'll find, I know you've seen part of this, you've been part of it by calling in and being part of the shows, that the write-up goes one way, and it's kind of a brainstorming of, like, my wild ideas as they kind of just ramble, cascade down the way. But then the show starts there with like the top 5% of it, and then it just meanders wherever we take it. It was the conversation, which is the incredible part, is that a lot of that stuff goes to the cutting room floor. So it ends up being really two art pieces standalone that are based on the same concept. And one is sort of through my frame of reference, and then the rest becomes a shared frame of reference. And it's really become a beautiful thing. So thanks for pointing that out. Thanks for listening. And once again, thanks for inviting me. I was really happy to be here. I had a great time.
And definitely, thanks for coming. And so you guys, if you guys want to say a few things, and then David, and then I'll wrap up. So go ahead. This is the time to shine.
Well, it's been several hours, so I'm starting to drift now. Like, I'm starting to get burned out and tired. I'll just admit that right now. But so I don't really, so I don't have any. Dude, the camera's going crazy on me. AI. So I don't have anything specific to contribute right at this second. But I really do appreciate everybody's participation and the information that's been shared. I like that Sasha put this together to create a wonderful environment for this type of activity, because in the community, usually this sort of thing is focused more on an officialdom kind of communication. Usually comes from like a conference at IRVA or something like that, which they're all great. But to put something together like this on a smaller scale, I think is very nice. And it was great hearing everybody's thoughts. And I appreciate everybody that is communicating through the chats with the questions and comments. It's wonderful. So I just appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I do have to admit, I wasn't sure. There was a point a few weeks ago where I thought, I don't know if we're going to have presenters. I don't know if people are going to show up. And so I'm just glad everyone was really enthusiastic about participating. And also, I am not good at correspondence. And because Mint, Magic in the Noise, is just David and I, if we're not in the mood to be secretary that week, then the secretarial work doesn't get done. And I often complain to David, like, I really look forward to the point where we can somehow figure out how to get an admin assistant, and so that they can do that and we can get back to being remote viewers. That would be awesome. And so, so yeah. And so it's nice that it did come together, and I'm glad that it did. And we'll have to put something on like this again, just because I think it was fun. From the chat, John Dixon says, I believe Lynn Buchanan speaks of how the plants seeds in some of his CRE sessions that relate to the synchronization topic, and even to use that to make decisions. Oh, he plants seeds in some of his CRE sessions. Oh, yes, for the synchronization topic. John Dixon, yeah, okay, so my understanding of Lynn Buchanan's methodology is, so let's say he says, okay, I need to buy a new car. Should I go with the red one or the blue one? There are pros and cons for each. So I'm going to, in the future, in a year after I've purchased the car, I'm going to send a message back to myself to tell me which car to buy. So if I bought the red one and I'm unhappy with it, I'm going to send the message back to buy the other one. But if I'm really happy with my purchase, I'll send the message back. And then I think every Thursday at 2 p.m. or something, he does a remote viewing session where he's receiving data from his future decisions and choices. And it sounds so off the wall and crazy, but it does work. It works well for him and for other people who have tried it. And I can't say I haven't dabbled in it a little bit just to see if it works. And it's a strange phenomenon. So yeah, thank you for bringing that up, John. Oh, thank you. So he says, he appreciates what we're doing here, and that's always nice to hear. And so I have been super excited and super chatty. And so like David as well, it's a few hours under these very bright white lights. So I'm fading a little bit as well. So I think we're going to kind of wrap it up. But again, thank you to everyone. Thank you for participating. Thank you for the patience. That was what I was kind of going towards and lost my way. Thank you for the patience. I'm not very good at corresponding all the time. Sometimes I'm great at correspondence. I'm there. I'm replying to your message right away. Sometimes I am not. And so even this morning, I sent the live stream link a little bit at the last minute. So thank you for allowing that from me. Yeah, and so please, everyone, I've put some of the links in the description box below on YouTube. We're also streaming out to Twitter, which is the first time we're doing that successfully. And we're streaming out to Twitch, which is the first time we're doing that. So I don't know how that's going to go. But we will check the comments everywhere. And do check out the links from all these people. If you're watching this somewhere where the links aren't showing up, then come to our YouTube and we'll have them there, or our Facebook, we'll post the links there. I don't think we have them yet this morning, but we'll put them there this afternoon. And so, yeah, so I think that's all. I'm going to end the stream. Thank you, everyone, again, and we will see you soon.
Okay,
Bye.
thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Everybody.